Woo!
Yeah. That's
All right,
probably the
we're
best
live.
joke you've ever
I
told.
can't believe we talked about that before we were live. We really dodged a bullet there. We would have definitely not brand safe content, is all I know.
Brand safe.
Brand safe.
Hello.
Yeah, it's okay.
Hello, everybody. Hello, internet.
Hello.
What's up, chat?
I'm sitting in a different chair than normal.
I know. I had to lower my chair a little bit. You had to raise your chair a little bit. It all worked out in the end.
All right, I'm popping out my chat.
Elena's in a different chair. Adam's on screen.
Yeah.
Adam's on a screen.
On a different chair.
Virtual Adam.
Virtual
Adam. We were just
spinning chair.
we were just talking. We were just talking about tricks to sleep on planes besides just sleeping pills.
Yeah. What is your tip?
Yeah, because I mean the problem I have is that I'm too tall. Like the seat, where the headrest part of the seat hits me is like mid shoulder blade.
So we were talking about this before the show started, and my tip as somebody who is like roughly 5'4"-ish, so like average American woman height, is that you take your personal item, which presumably is a backpack, and you stuff, and if it's not already full, you stuff your jacket in there, you like make it plump, and then you put your tray table down, you put the backpack on top of that, and then you just like lean against the backpack, because that takes up the space, and then you don't have to worry about like rolling off the side of your like, you know, seat or whatever when you're trying to just sleep sitting upright. But Will was saying that he is too tall.
If I do that and the person in front of me leans their chair back, which is a crime, just to be clear, then my spine will be compressed and I will die.
But how will it be compressed? Because like if you just stack things on top of the backpack.
Well, okay, so what you're saying is I should get one of those big, giant, inflatable triangle wedge pillows and just put that in there and then just go...
no, so like
all down that
you don't
thing.
have to like awkwardly twist. Like all I'm doing is just I have the back, like pretend the microphone's my backpack. I just like go like this and I just go to sleep.
So what I need is one of those big inflatable things, and it needs to have a face hole like a massage table, and it needs to have like a little bit of fan. Well, I'm emailing this to myself right now, patent pending. It needs to have a little fan at the bottom that just has a constant circulation of air up through the tube into my nose, so and also a slobber catcher, so that when I'm asleep there, you know, it's just that's
heard it first here, folks.
I'd buy it.
Just wait. Yeah, Brad knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm just about to get on a plane and now I feel like I'm missing out.
Can you imagine if you like rolled into the plane and the person was getting in there and they like had, look, I pre-inflated it while I was at the gate. Don't worry, and they're just like it's just like bopping down the aisle, smacking everybody in the back of the head.
But imagine you're on an aisle row.
Oh yeah,
somebody needs to get out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Look, you're in the face hole. They're not going to get you out of the zone.
In the face hole.
Yeah.
Well, here's the real tip. You just don't sleep.
Yeah.
I loaded up like I have 3 different handhelds with me in my bag. So no matter what,
which did you anoint to bring with you?
So I have the Steam Deck OLED.
The classic.
I have the Asus ROG Ally X with the Xite, and then I also have the Ambernic RG XXXV whatever.
Is that the little guy with the sticks above the keyboard?
No. It's the Linux based emulator.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it looks like a Game Boy.
That's too many. That's too many handhelds, Adam.
No.
What?
And if you're flying to the other side of the earth.
No, but the thing is that like you can't always. I understand Adam's thinking here though, because you can't always rely on the plane having an outlet, right? Usually they do now.
Yeah, the international flights, you're good.
But you can't. But sometimes, depending on the plane, like you have to share them with your seatmate, and sometimes your seatmate. The negotiation rights can be a tenuous process.
Yeah. Huh?
So, like, if you have just 3 handhelds and they're all fully charged, and you can just like successively like go through them as the flight progresses.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, because each one of them are only going to last like 2 hours. So.
Wait, I thought each seat, especially international, has their own outlets.
Yeah. On modern
I
planes,
think on modern planes they
though.
do, but like sometimes, you know, I've like run into this where you
you could 757, 600 or something ancient.
And then you have the
Elena's
confused
with pink seats.
that, but also sometimes you also have a confused seatmate too.
Well,
They don't understand how planes work.
You need to put them in the face hole and then teach them a lesson. You get in the punishment wedge until you think about what you did wrong.
Is this how we're marketing it?
Yeah, it's like you know, it's multi-purpose. It's for kids.
All right, I like it.
Little plane jail.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna pop off because we're boarding soon.
Right.
But I might be able to get in the chat.
People
we'll see if I got Wi-Fi.
I was gonna say, like, if you
Not
get
like
on,
what up, chat?
if you get on from the plane and you're like, hey, what up, chat, from 35,000 feet, that is sure to make you a fan. Everybody around you will be a fan.
Yeah, your seatmates will love
Yeah,
you.
seatmates are gonna be like, oh man,
I'm on a call.
Oh God, you're gonna be that guy.
I hate that.
No.
Did you
No.
remember the good old days when you got on the airplane and like everybody just sat quietly and read a magazine?
When did you fly? Like, what flights were you on?
Well, that was like pre-devices, right? Pre-2007.
Back in my day.
Back when I was back in my day, people would get on. People would sometimes even read the Seat Back magazine. They do the bad crossword in the back of it.
I don't know.
No
Will.
internet, no TV.
But
Those were
Will,
good magazines.
I think though that you are conveniently forgetting the downside to that era.
You mean the smoking section that was separated with the curtain?
Okay, I don't go that far back.
I'm old.
Sorry. I mean the children who very understandably could not sit still for like 6 to 10 hours. So they would be screaming or otherwise
Kicking your
squirming
chair.
or kicking your chair. And then you would give the death glare to their parents and they would look at you like, I've been through stuff. You can't hurt me.
So I came back from the East Coast one time, and it was a memorable flight because there was a dad and like a baby, like a brand new baby sitting next on the window. The baby had the window in a chair strapped in, and the dad was there. And like we had a night. It was before phones. It was before internet. So we had a chat, and he was like, "I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, the baby's going to." It's gonna do a crap the moment the plane takes off. And I was like, okay, this is pre-child for me. I was like, I don't need this information, but that is the thing. Like babies unload the moment the wheels leave the ground. They just know what's up.
Did you immediately turn to her and say, "Don't worry about it. I'm also going to do the same thing"?
Yeah. Well, no. So the dad was like, I'm going to give you a choice. Like the baby will also fall asleep the moment the plane takes off. But if we wake her up to change the diaper, she's going to be awake the whole flight. Or, like, you might get an occasional poo waft here. And since I'm used to it, I can deal with it either way. I don't care. It's up to you. And I was like, I'm fine with the sleeping baby. I can deal with the bad smell because realistically, 80% of the people around us are going to start farting the moment we hit 10,000 feet. So, let her rip, baby. That's what I said. And that baby was a chill baby. And then the guy he worked at a winery up in Marin, and he sent me a case of wine afterwards for being a cool seatmate about the baby pooping itself.
That's so nice.
So it worked out.
Whoa.
It did work out.
Yeah.
Nice. At least you got
Nice. Yeah. Well, I know what to expect on my flight.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be pooping.
Free case of wine in Fart City.
All right, but before I go real quick, I got to say this is the first time Elena is sitting in the captain's chair. So
Captain,
it's going to rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch back later and see how awesome you did. So
you'll live on the plane. You'll watch it live on the plane. Actually, during meal service, Adam, you should just come back on and just show us your in-flight meal.
It's the worst on international flights when they're like, we're gonna just turn on the lights right now because we have to serve you a meal, and you're like, everyone was sleeping. Why would you do this to us?
Well, here should I get the Western style breakfast or the Asian style breakfast?
Asian.
What's the Asian style breakfast? Is it like a rice?
Got congee.
Congee, yeah.
Yeah, the rice porridge. Yeah, that stuff's definitely do that.
Yeah, it'll get you your stomach situated.
Definitely do that
for your stinky tofu and durian adventures over there.
What airline are you flying? What airline are you flying?
EVA.
Oh,
EVA
okay.
Air.
Yeah, definitely lean into the Asian food options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't eat the fish.
Savory rice porridge. This sounds delicious.
You've never had rice porridge?
I'm from Tennessee, Elena.
But how long have you lived here?
Well, so I don't go for breakfast out. Really.
You don't have to wait for breakfast. You could have this any time of day.
Well, now I'm realizing that this is like I see porridge and I think it's breakfast.
Willis will back me up on this. Yeah. This is a staple after Thanksgiving dinner because they will take all the turkey bones and they will just make like rice porridge from the turkey stock, and that will just last for days.
Oh, yeah.
Look, so we did that too, right? We took the carcass and put some like frozen carrots and peas and green beans and stuff in there, and then you boiled it until it was soup, and
you make rice porridge.
I understand
with
that. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. I'm going to pull recipes after the podcast. I'm ready to go.
Adam,
all right, I'm ready to go too.
Adam,
Okay.
Bye, Adam. Safe travels.
Adam, real quick, before you go, I'm gonna see you in a couple days, or really soon. But hey, no floor candy, no random flash drive on the floor. Okay, please do not pick them up.
Yeah,
I implore you.
SFO keeps their floors pretty clean right now. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right, safe
And
flight.
good luck. Safe flight. Enjoy your meals.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah,
Adios,
good luck.
Steve.
Go team. Bye.
Alrighty.
Oh, it's just you, Brad.
Man,
Hey, welcome
San
back.
Francisco has a way nicer airport than Logan in Boston.
Wait, you've flown out of SFO, don't you remember?
International SFO.
Yeah,
though.
and it's always way nicer. I always
Yeah.
forget about how much nicer it is until I see it again.
In fairness, though, Terminal 1 is like brand new, so that is not how it always used to look.
I don't know how it is. It astonishes me every time I go into Logan in Boston. There's somehow footprints on the drop tiles in the ceiling all the time. Just adds to the ambiance.
That's incredible. Look, at least Boston, you have like functional mass transit that's easy and fast and is like 10 minutes into the city rather than,
Yeah, it's not bad.
Are you dissing Bart?
look, it finally is kind of okay.
I took it this morning. It's actually pretty nice.
I like Bart. I'm just saying SFO Bart is like inconvenient and bad and like taking
What?
the train to the train is like just put the station right there, man.
Well, that's not
Yeah.
how. What?
What? I don't take Bart. I don't take this. When I
Wait,
lived in the city,
you're
and I could take,
criticizing a system that you don't even
Look,
use.
okay, so realistically, when was the last time I took Bart to the airport? It's been a minute. But it used to be, don't you have to take the little rental car shuttle train to the BART station now? It just comes right in there?
No, it drops you off in international terminal on the G
that's
side.
okay then. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, see, what, I was like, what are you talking about? All right, are we going to?
Good. Hamsters are spinning.
I don't even know what the topics are. I should probably make myself. I know what the topics are, but I don't know what we've officially called them. Is what I mean to say.
Now the real question is: have you written a script, or are you just going to freelance it like that? The empty notepad. This is an Adam classic.
You know what? It is a tried and true tradition here because Gordon used to do it too.
I mean, look, the first time I was on the show, it took Gordon, I think, 5 tries to get through the intro in a way that he was happy with, and I was there for it. It's always good. So,
You got this, Elena.
Something's gonna happen.
Just wing it.
Yeah. Just remember, it's episode 347.
I can take care of that when we get back in.
yeah, so that's in post.
That one, you know, it's like if I can wing that one.
We'll just loop it in after the recording later, and it'll be fine. Nobody will know. I'm just excited that it's Tuesday and we get our last episodes of Andor tonight. That is what I'm excited.
I need to start watching that. I haven't watched a single episode. I think that's going to be my binge session next.
It's been like 3 good Star Wars movies so far. Like more good Star Wars movies in the last month than in the last decade.
Heck yeah. I'm in. That's what everybody is saying too. I cannot wait.
Yeah, it rips.
Yeah, I need to catch up. You good, Elena?
I was good, and now I actually can't remember the format of how this goes. Stage fright, everybody. It does wild stuff to your brain.
In this episode of The Full Nerd.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Should we just sing it, say it in a line in unison, or in unison? We can do it in unison.
No, it's fine.
All 4 of us.
It's okay. I don't mind doing bloopers. It's just literally my brain's like, wait.
Well, this is how it
do
works.
we do this before? Do we do this after? How do I start this?
Look, Adam always starts it with
like,
"What up, chat?"
It's not like I've been on this show for like at least 250 episodes or something.
Yeah.
Apparently, I just tune out when it's time for the intro.
Well, it's
channel Gordon, channel Adam.
It's like on the Old Tested podcast for years and years and years. Norm never heard the music because we always added it in post. And he came in, and when he started hosting the show, he was like, "I'd literally never heard this music before." It's like, you've been on the podcast.
He just like had a
300 times.
timer. Like he was just like, and now.
Well, no, we just cut it because we didn't record it. We didn't do it live. So we just cut it and dropped it in. And like whoever did the edit.
So what he's telling you is that he never listened to the episodes afterwards.
Do you listen to the episodes of The Full Nerd after you've been on them?
Occasionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to like see if like I remembered like what someone said.
Okay.
Brad's like, I'm good.
Yeah, Brad's shaking his head. Yeah,
like
really.
I'm saying it's not.
No, I'll go read the comments the next morning, but that's about it.
I'm not saying I watch every single one in full. Sometimes I just have to review the tape.
Yeah. It's nice to know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not actually trying to stall, but this is how it's going.
Yeah, no, you're doing good.
All right, here we go.
Right.
Excuse me. In this episode of The Full Nerd, Microstutter Sucks RX 70. Sorry. Oh, that's my first blooper.
You
Look.
got it. You're good.
You're good. You're good.
I was at 7090.
7090. That's a different one.
That's
but,
a different one. Okay, here we go. In this episode of The Full Nerd, Microstutter Sucks RX 9070 GRE launches, Computex, and more.
We'll get to the music back someday.
We'll sign that contract at
This
some
is a real
point.
throwback.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode. Whoa. I did flub
No,
it.
you got it.
No, episode, almost at 400.
You're in it now.
I was like in the future. It's
Yeah.
episode 347. I am Elena, your fill-in for your fill-in host. And with me today on the line is co-host Brad Tarkus.
Hello, fellow co-host of the day. Hello, Internet.
Yes, I am very temporary. I also have next to me one Will Smith.
Hello, ahoy hoy. I don't know if you can see it on the stream, but Brad's shirt is spectacular. It's like a Wu-Tang Macho Man.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen that legendary Macho Man bit? The cream rises to the top.
Yeah, of course.
My buddy got me this.
That's
Oh.
remarkable.
Wu-Tang X Macho Man.
That's very
Nice.
good.
Nice.
And then on the verticals and horizontals, we have Willis Lai.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I am. This is my last. Well, not last week, but like the week that I'm here in the office, and then I'll be joining Adam very soon. He was on the pre-show earlier from the airport, and I need to finish packing actually. So yeah, getting ready for Computex.
It's okay. You don't need to pack because all you need to do is just leave in a gigantic amount of space for all the snacks you're going to bring home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like to think that this is your Kinder Egg hole.
Yes.
Jam 'em
You're
in.
still on the Kinder
The
Egg
Kinder
kick.
eggs.
Look,
yeah.
I love the Kinder Eggs. They're not. They had baby Kinder Eggs this year that were like solid
Baby.
chocolate with no toy,
So they're just eggs.
with chocolate and it had the transitional layer inside, but no.
You know, I've never
They
had
were
a
tiny.
I've never had a Kinder Egg. I don't actually know how they're layered.
Ask Willis, he'll bring them back.
Is it?
It's like a shell, and then inside the shell there's a choking hazard with a toy inside it, which is why we don't have them here in America.
Because we don't believe in choking hazards.
Because-
the rest of the world does.
Because the Consumer Product Safety Commission, rest in peace, said, hey, this is exactly the right size to get lodged in a child's windpipe, a thing that has literally never happened in Europe or the other places that Kinder Eggs are sold. And they said, you can't sell this. It's right up there with the lawn darts and the bag of glass as toys that are not appropriate for children.
Bag of glass.
You never seen the bag of glass skit?
No.
Okay, so look, this is like a first season Saturday Night Live Dan Aykroyd skit where he's a dirtbag toy salesman.
Oh,
He's
boy.
talking about, all the toys that the narcs at the CPSC have banned you from selling in the United States, and he shows like Jane Curtin or somebody the bag of glass, which is, you can imagine, it's just a bag of glass.
And I assume this is before tempered glass was a thing, right? So we just have
They
like
had tempered glass in the 70s.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Look.
There are some things that were invented well after I was born that you would think would be normal, but they were not.
Look, yeah, the save icon. We all know. We all know.
I'm not that young.
The
I
same
wish I were.
icon.
My joints creak all the time.
Here's something everyone might not know, though.
Ooh.
This week, we're actually launching a Full Nerd newsletter.
Ooh.
Where Elena's going to start writing it, sending out the end of the week. It's going to be Friday morning time. It might be Saturday morning, but the idea is just if you missed a show, you can sign up for the newsletter. She'll send it out with some commentary. Also going to be going around and trying to find all the cool, interesting, like the kind of news that us nerds care about from around the web and kind of like linking to all the coolest stuff that happened that week. So
Or
if you're
infuriating.
interested in that, it's kind of like a weekend wrap up.
I
Go to
love
PCWorld,
this.
you go all the way down to the bottom. There's a newsletters button, and you can hit that and sign yourself up.
That is
Nice.
fabulous.
Friend of the show, Dr. Ian Cuttress, would like to know, are the newsletters also going to be posted on the site?
They will be, in fact. Yeah, we plan on posting them and then saying, hey, you want to write to your inbox? You can get it right in your inbox, too.
Nice.
It's what the kids crave. It's stuff in their inboxes.
Yeah, make me look good in front of my boss. Sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah. I will sign up for that newsletter immediately. That is exciting.
All right. We have done a lot of pre-show talking about travel and food and bags of glass. But so here's the thing. Like, I was looking at the topics we could cover for the week. There's definitely some that are, how shall we say, ripe for outrage ponies to ride. But this one caught my attention because this was kind of the opposite of that, where it was like something that a company is doing well. And then I was like, oh, I've actually really not spent a lot of time talking about microstutter and how that affects games. And as the person who did this video, I thought it'd be fun to kind of dive into that and like talk more about that, because we were talking about this a little bit last week on the show, which is a lot of times that if you present a chart to a normie or someone that's like kind of like between enthusiast and normie, they're just going to look basically at the frames per second, and then even if you give them a chart that's like got like the 1% lows, things like that, they're not really going to pay attention or contextualize that. So like this to me is like in that space of like this actually materially can affect your perceived experience, but people don't really talk about it because, as all of us reviewers know, there's just a certain point where you're like, I gotta sleep, I gotta eat, I really need a shower, I just want to feel human again.
Well, so
showerings for after deadline.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the reward. You get a Hollywood shower. You never been on a submarine? Hollywood shower is on when you don't. So on submarines, they don't have a lot of water. I can't believe non sequitur day here. Adam goes away and the whole thing goes to hell. On submarines in the old days before there were nuclear submarines, you'd get to take a shower like once a week, and it would be like you get yourself wet, and then you turn off the water and soap yourself up, and then you rinse the soap off, and then you get out of the shower, and it's like 2 minutes and like a half gallon of water, right, for each sailor. And if you did something really good, one of the rewards you get on the submarine is the Hollywood shower, which is where you like get hot water, you leave it on the whole time, and it's like a normal human shower, or what you think of as bathing, is like the reward for good behavior on the submarine.
Okay, it's just the way you said it. I didn't know if it was a reference to something more adult.
No, what? Why do you put the sex on? Okay. So
anyway, microstutters.
Yeah.
Microstutters.
So we were talking about this. NVIDIA gave us early access to Doom because it's a partner game for them. Thanks. So shout out to Bethesda and NVIDIA for the code. But one of the things that always strikes me about these modern Doom games, starting with 2016, is that their average frame rates are very low by like modern fast shooter standards, but they feel way faster than pretty much anything else out there. And it's often people, you alluded to this earlier, often when people are evaluating video cards or games, you just look at the average frame rate. So for example, in Star Wars Outlaws, which is my favorite kind of a bad example of this, so sorry for always picking on Star Wars Outlaws, but I was playing it on a 1080p monitor last year, and I was getting like 150 frames a second, and it felt like it was running at about 30. And when you actually looked at what's happening there, it's that I'm going to take a step back, a little bit of background first.
Oh, story time.
Frame rate is a measure of the amount of time it takes to render a certain number of frames in a second. How many frames you can render in a second, averaged out over the length of whatever your benchmark is generally. But that doesn't tell the whole story. You can also look at the time it takes to render each individual frame inside that run, and that's usually expressed in a matter of milliseconds. Now, if you convert that milliseconds to seconds and then invert it and multiply it by 60, then you get basically the average frame rate for that frame. We did a video about this a couple months ago, and I used a whiteboard and explained it to Adam, and his mind was suitably blown. The upshot is, if there's a lot of variance, you can have 1 or 2 frames in a 1 minute period, in a 60-second period, or 1 or 2 frames per second, even at 120 or 130 frames a second average, that spike really, really high, that it take way longer to render than the other frames, and those frames will make the game feel like it's running at a much lower speed. You'll perceive a much lower frame rate than the average would indicate that you have. And the tools to measure this are not great, right? Like they exist. a lot of developers use them to like performance profile their games and figure out where there's like an asset. Like occasionally you'll dump an asset into the game and you'll have like a really, really like the highest quality. We're going to use this for the 8K remaster in 10 years asset. And it didn't get munged down into like the game shipping ready asset. So you use these kind of tools to kind of find those assets when you're playing the game. If somebody is like, hey, there's always a really bad frame stutter at the third corner in this level or whatever. So, Dr. Ian Cut just points out, Scott Wasson from Tech Report, Dr. Damage from the Ars Technica days 100 years ago, was the first journo to highlight this as an issue early, before NVIDIA was talking about it, before anybody else was talking about it.
That's landmark consumer technology journalism, that post that he did.
Yeah.
Like, Scott, shout out to Scott for putting that out there.
He split off from the Ars Technica guys fairly early and kind of dug really hard into the consumer technology space because that's what he was more interested in. And it ended up being like an incredible site. He's at AMD now, I think. I can't remember. Maybe Intel. I can't remember. I think AMD.
He's at the ML Perf, I believe it is, at the benchmark.
Oh, okay.
ML stuff.
So anyway, the point is, there's some easy tools that make it relatively straightforward to pull this data out. Now you can use Perfmon to do this. You can also use NVIDIA has a FrameView app that basically gives you a spreadsheet, a CSV with all the frame times for every frame in a period of time that you choose. So you can hit a button and it'll record 60 seconds of frame times and spit that out. So what I did was set up my Stream Deck to hit the FrameView button and start recording in OBS and give me video capture and FrameView captures of the same 60 seconds. And then I took those FrameView captures and generated some graphs off of them using a tool called CapFrameX. I could have done it in Excel or whatever because it's just numbers. And we were able to because normally when you want to show Microstutter, it's kind of hard to do in YouTube because converting 200 frames per second video game on my monitor to 60 frames per second video on YouTube it just smooths all that stuff out.
Yeah, it gets weird.
Yeah, it's like the smoothest brain. You can't see the stutters. So I overlaid the frame time graph on top of the video and had it expose the graph as it was going through that video. So you were seeing, where the line was visible was more or less the counter at the frame time counter for each frame. And you can see in even the Doom scene, there's a place where you turn a corner and you see some new assets and you see a big shader and all this force field stuff. And that had a big frame hitch the first time you saw that, right? When in Oblivion, when menus opened, you saw huge frame spikes because the menus take a significant fraction of a second to load, stuff like that. It ended up being really, really interesting. Just an interesting way to visualize that. And this is, I think, probably going to be the first of a series kind of exploring this stuff. Because the big takeaway I had out of this after I was done with this video was like, oh, you could actually use this whole process and dig into settings files to figure out which settings are going to reduce your microstutter more and things like that. And so you can get actionable configuration information for your machine for the games that you spend a lot of time playing. Like if you're really into Call of Duty or Fortnite or Rocket League or something like that. So anyway.
But how would you be doing that with this information?
So what I would do is set up a shortcut. So, bind your start recording in OBS and stop recording in OBS button to the same button that you use to trigger frame view, right? And what I would do is change my settings in the control panel. Like one of the things that people often recommend to reduce microstutter, and I didn't do it for this video for specific reasons, but if you're trying to reduce microstutter, what you do is you lock the frame rate in the game to somewhere between the maximum frame rate of your or 2 hertz less than the maximum frame rate of your monitor, according to Blurbusters. All the way down to somewhere where your 1% lows are. So I can reduce microstutter in Fortnite a lot by locking my frame rate to just above the 1% low number. And then I see much less variance between the average frame rate and the average frame time for the 1% slowest frames. And that makes the game feel a lot smoother and much better, even though the average frame rate has gone super far down. It's gone from 280 frames a second to 150 frames a second. The perception that I have as a player is that my frame time, everything feels better, feels faster.
So for someone who would be trying this for the first time, what would you say is the goal for getting rid of microstutter, right? So like, are we looking to try to like keep things at a certain like tempo, for lack of a better term? Like I'm thinking more like music, like you're trying to keep it on the beat, so to speak. Is that what you're aiming for?
Yeah. So you want the frames to come out at the same interval consistently from one frame to the next. And when you look at the graphs, you see a bunch of different things, right? So like Doom is really interesting because the other graph I pulled out, and this is like at the 8-minute mark if you want to fast forward, is the variance between frames. So it's like a distribution of all of and when I say variance between frames, I mean the time it takes to render one frame and the time it takes to render the next frame, and you take the difference between those two. And Doom had like 99 point something percent within 2 milliseconds of each other. So that means,
ludicrous.
Yeah, it's insane. Ludicrous. Like nothing else came anywhere close to this. So that means like the one frame is 8 milliseconds, and the next frame takes less than between 10 and 6 milliseconds, right? And that's incredibly difficult to do, judging by the other games that I ran this numbering. Because even games like Rocket League is a good example. Rocket League's a 10-year-old game at this point. It runs on a potato. It runs well on a potato, and we still saw some spikes about every 4 point something milliseconds, every 4 point something seconds in Rocket League. There was a consistent spike, and like, why was that there? I have no idea. Like the other reason we're talking about this is it's typically not something you can optimize around. You can set your settings so that you aren't affected by it as much, but like I can't do anything in my settings. Like turning off anti-aliasing or turning off anisotropic filtering or something like that isn't going to make this not happen. This is happening because something in the game loop stalls every X amount of time, because, you know, rendering a screen in a video game, rendering an image in a video game is like, it's like 300 funnels constantly pouring data into different pipelines, and they all have to sync up at exactly the same time in order for you to get the output of that frame at the time that your monitor needs to display. So if any one of those funnels gets stalled, then the frame stalls, and it either skips that frame or it goes to the next one, or it just waits and displays it late, and then the difference between that frame and the next frame is too short, and you have these moments where it feels like the frame rate is going really far down, and it feels like when you move your mouse, it's really apparent in mouse and keyboard games, I think. When you move the mouse, it feels like that movement isn't smooth, right? And it doesn't matter so much. It matters in racing games a lot. The racing game people came out in comments and were like, hey, please look at racing games next time you do this, because we really care about this. But it also matters in games that are like Twitch games where you're getting headshots matters. Because like if you're moving your mouse if you're doing a quick flick to get your crosshair on somebody's head, and it judders midway through that flick, your brain isn't going to be able to get it in the right place at the right time, and it's going to impact your ability to perform in the game. So that's the reason you care about this, I guess. Sorry, Brad.
I think one of the really cool things about your video, which everyone should go watch, it's a great video. It's like 10, 12 minutes long, and it's very insightful, is you show the difference between frame pacing in these multiplayer games in Doom versus single player games, and actually explain why it's okay for these differences to happen in single player games. Yeah. So if this is all like somewhat of a new concept to you, don't fully grasp your head around it, go watch Will's video. It's super insightful.
It was really interesting. So I first became aware of this when I was working in VR 10 years ago, right? Because in VR, if you don't hit frame rate, if you didn't hit 75 to 90 hertz, depending on the platform, then people get motion sick and like
feels bad.
It feels bad. It makes a significant portion of your audience throw up. And in some cases it would make you fail cert. Like Oculus would let you have a certain number of frames per second go above the threshold. And if their testing showed more than that, then they'd kick it back to you and say, hey, make this better. And so we built a bunch of tools in to let us monitor that stuff. And our goal there was to get, I think, between 6 and 9 milliseconds per frame, which works out to 90 frames a second average. So yeah, it's really interesting, I guess, it's an interesting topic. There's not a lot we can do as users to measure it. I think this is why NVIDIA's focused so much on frame gen over the last couple of generations, is because frame gen lets them fix this problem even on games where the developers aren't able to solve the issue. As you can see in a game like Outlaws, which has both pacing and variance between individual frame problems. Because if you look at the interesting thing is like the good curves on this are straight, right? So you like each frame is taking the same amount of time. And when you get to a game like Outlaws, the curve goes up and down based on where you are in the world and what it's doing. So some sections of the game just run faster than other sections of the game. And then there's also stuttering on top of that. And yeah, anyway, it's a weird.
When I was watching your video, that was actually the follow-up coverage. And I'm like, I would love to see that. Specifically because you've mentioned so many times about how DLSS 4 has made Star Wars Outlaws feel so good. Yeah. I think it'd be really cool to compare the frame timing using the exact same thing that you did with the native Star Wars Outlaws laws versus doing it with DLSS 4 on, so you can capture and see exactly what a difference that technology that NVIDIA has in there makes.
I can do that. I can do that. I think I definitely want to explore the single player stuff more because I think it's really interesting. And I think that's the place that the frame gen stuff really shines. I also want to do here's how to optimize. Here's how you can take this information, generate a file, and then figure out if your settings are being impactful or not. And because I think that's a thing that like a lot of us just hit the button in GeForce Experience or NVIDIA app or whatever it's called now. And we assume that's the best we can do. And I think there's probably more room, especially if you're sensitive to this. The other thing that shocked me about this was that like the good example of this was the 99 point something percent of frames within 2 milliseconds of each other of adjacent frames. The bad was like 94% of adjacent like Fortnite, which has microstutter problems. 94% of frames or 96% of frames were within that 2 milliseconds of each other, and it still felt stuttery. So like our ability to perceive this we're incredibly sensitive to this in a way, like human beings are incredibly sensitive to this in a way that is unusual in like this kind of testing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So kind of the follow-up to that, my question, around all of this is if the frame rates don't need to be as high to get that kind of high quality sort of experience, how much of this rush to like get faster and faster monitors so that you can run at higher and higher frame rates, like how much of that is just making up for this problem and how much of that is actually a benefit to someone who's sensitive to it? Like I know Brad is really sensitive to it, so I'm kind of curious your take on this too.
I think what Will's talking about, especially in Fortnite, is great. It is those spikes that you notice that it feels bad and stuff when you play competitive games. I haven't played around with it too much, so I can't speak to the experience. I haven't locked my frames like that.
I'd be curious to hear what you think, honestly, because I know you're sensitive to that.
Brad's a sensitive guy. We know that. So I locked Fortnite to the 1% low number that I pulled from my testing, right? And when I played the next time with my friends and I was just, just having a normal good time, I felt like an aim god. Because my flicks were landing exactly where I expected them to, and I was landing way more up close hedge. I was doing better up close and far away. And I mean, some of it could be placebo effect. It's not double blind, whatever. We're not actually doing real testing on this. This is entirely anecdotal, but it felt like it's the difference between sweeping your mouse over and landing and stopping exactly where you land and going on. Now, the thing I will say is that the incredibly high skill esports players who are playing games like Counter-Strike or Valorant or things like that will run at 1% lows at 250 plus frames a second are probably like, that's who these high refresh rate monitors are for. There's a secondary side example of people who want to emulate CRT business, like CRT phosphor glow and stuff like that are using OLEDs and some really complex post-production shaders to do that now. And you need like 240 hertz OLED minimum to make that work, right? But for
that's dedication.
Yeah, I mean, those are hardcore. For the most part, if you have 120, 144, or 240 hertz monitor, you're probably good, especially if you mostly play single player stuff or just goofing around in Fortnite or Apex or Call of Duty or something like that. So those 360 hertz panels, I think, are esports grade, not for normal human beings, probably.
So it sounds like throwing money at a problem isn't necessarily going to get you the results you're looking for, whereas this actually might. And so kind of dovetailing into another question I think I saw, or a comment I saw from Ian in the chat was like, this process sounds like it could be or needs to be redone every time there's a driver release, like an update.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it because they do like there is work that happens on this. if you're playing on platforms that cache shaders, like if you're playing on Steam Deck, you maybe don't have to worry about this because they pre-cache all the shader compilations. And a lot of this Microstutter is because you hit some new material that has a shader that isn't pre-compiled, and the compilation is one of the things that causes that. We're generally getting better at that as a games industry now because people are aware of it as a problem. And that's why you see things like, Call of Duty has a really aggressive shader compilation step when you load into the menu the first time, and it does single player, multiplayer, Warzone, all the different modes shaders, and lets you know when they're done. Even like I said, Fortnite does that now. When you after a patch, after a driver update, the first time you get into a game, as you're loading into the lobby, it'll run a shader compilation step, and then often you instead of getting into the lobby when you're on the ground, you'll get into the lobby when you're already on the bus, or maybe sometimes even falling from the bus at the end of the flight path. So it is something you have to kind of keep an eye on. I think my experience doing this with Fortnite and PUBG and games like that is that once you get to a pretty good spot, you're probably okay, and you just might want to spot check it occasionally. And I think if you're not, I was talking to some game developer friends about this after this video went up because they had questions. And if you're not profiling the game to try to find assets that are a problem or shaders that are maybe not getting compiled or whatever, because just to be clear, a lot of times when I say the developers are better at knowing to compile shaders, it means that somewhere in the material in Unreal or Godot or Unity or Frostbite or whatever your engine is, you checked a box that says include this material shader in your shader precompiling process. And every time the technical artist forgets to do that, you're going to get a hitch when that loads the first time after the game launches. So the engines are bad about automating that for kind of good reasons, but it's a thing to be aware of. So yeah, I don't think you have to obsessively do this every time there's a patch or a driver update or whatever. But if you start feeling the microstutter again, then maybe go back and revisit is what I would say probably. Yeah, because how long is this process? Well, I mean, capturing the frame grab they were a minute long grabs. So and like I said, you don't have to grab the video if you just care about the frame times. So you capture the thing, you get the CSV, you can do it in Excel, you can do it in CapFrameX if you're more into that. I think CapFrameX is one of the apps on the WinRing Zero driver thing that Steve and Wendell were talking about a couple weeks ago. So if you care about that, then maybe don't install CapFrameX and just use Excel. But you can then look at the graph and see what your spikes look like and see what your average lows and see what more than anything, that variance between frames is the thing that I found to be the biggest tell that you're having a problem. Roughly a 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes kind of thing per iteration. Yeah. That's not too bad then. It's not too bad. Yeah. It's and the output is really, it's not one of those ones where there's ambiguity in the output. Like the output, I ran multiple runs of each game, and the things that caused inconsistency, I showed a couple of them in the video just so people would know, but menu loads cause massive frame sag, which is fine because when the menu loads, you don't need 300 frames a second. You're looking at a menu, right? So you want to get runs that don't have those menu loads and stuff like that. But you do, in a game like a Battle Royale, you do want to have some characters, some enemies coming into the screen, and you do want to have some of the things that happen during the game that cause frame stutter to pop up. So, yeah. Any questions from the chat, Willis? I haven't been able to monitor like I normally do when I'm hiding on the side, quietly listening. Well, if not. Again, if you haven't seen Will's video, I highly recommend you go check it out. Yep. Thanks, Brad. I know all this stuff already. That's the reason I haven't contributed too much to this conversation. And even I found it fascinating and interesting to watch. You uncovered some really cool stuff. So go watch it if you haven't. It's a tool in our toolbox that didn't exist 10 years ago and makes things much easier to diagnose rather than just the vibe benchmarking, which always feels bad. Vibe benchmarking. Yeah. So I guess maybe that's kind of more the meta conversation that I originally had envisioned when I proposed this as a topic, because I guess for me, if this is in some ways very revolutionary to your experience in a game, why aren't we talking more about it as an industry? I think it's hard it's conceptually hard. Look, bigger bar better is really easy, Elena. What? But less spiky bar better doesn't have the same kind of. But is that a marketing issue? Yeah, of course. Everything's a marketing issue. I mean, it's it's much easier to say, hey, this is the fastest frame rate. I mean, in fairness, both NVIDIA and AMD over the last decade have tried to address microstutter. NVIDIA has been really aggressive about talking about microstutter to the point that I thought they were being a bit much. And then when I started messing with it, I was like, oh, well, maybe there's something here. But it is harder to understand than this card will give you an average frame rate of 300 frames a second, and this card will give you an average frame rate of 180 frames a second, and this card will give you an average frame rate if you use recommended settings at 60 frames a second, but 4 if you turn everything to ultra because it runs out of VRAM. Like, some things are easier to understand than others. Not enough VRAM turns out real easy. We'll talk about that, I think. But microstutter, kind of complicated and requires math. Like, you have to do the math. Do
you though, if you're using Excel?
Well, you don't, but you have to understand the relationship between frame times and average frame rate to really know, hey, maybe don't look at frame rate anymore and just care about this stuff. This is where the juice is, I think.
So,
you look skeptical.
No, it's not skeptical. I am once again putting on my hat where I represent the people.
Yeah.
The workers.
Yeah, the
Great Council.
common man, common person, yes.
And I'm just thinking, like, wow, like, this is, especially with all the uncertainty with U.S. fiscal policy and affecting prices, and like there being a lot of cards that are not really marketed towards people in the more, even true mid-range and budget, right? Like, this is a pretty good way to get more mileage out of your card without having to just throw money at the problem, thinking that, well, if I just get a faster card, it'll solve my issues with this game. And honestly, solve some of the comments that you will see from people where they're like, hey, I've been playing this game. I finally, upgraded my card, and man, it's not doing like poop for this. You know, like, I'm kind of frustrated now because now I spent all this money and didn't actually solve my problem. And so I'm just weighing the face that you saw. I'm just weighing in my head like, this seems like something we should be like evangelizing a bit more.
I mean, I think this is why I want to dig into it more, right? I want to look at, for example, there was no DLS. I didn't use any of the AI upscaling or AI frame gen. I think I left ray reconstruction on Oblivion probably, just because it was not performant without ray reconstruction on. But yeah, I think like it's a communication problem, right? We just need to talk about it more and dig into the different avenues. And I would love to know if people have suggestions for things they would like to know more about in this category. Like, I think looking at, so a lot of this started because there was a Reddit post on about Fortnite last year that somebody was like, hey, how do I get rid of microstarters in Fortnite? And then there were like 30,000 responses. It wasn't 30,000, but it was a lot of responses, and there was a lot of woo. There was a lot of snake oil and woo in there.
So like you just angle your PC at this degree relative to like where the moon is that night, right? And like you have your compass.
Wait, it's a feng shui issue?
Look, your video card's chakra is not aligned with the system RAM. You need that clocked at least 6,000 megatransfers per second.
You didn't make enough Dorito sacrifices on the altar. Altar, excuse me.
And so you look at that stuff, and a lot of it is like, well, turn off DLSS. And I was like, I don't know if that matters, but I'm going to test it to see because I'm curious.
I'm actually really curious for your research or your dive into that, because just imagine the amount of outrage pony debates we could have over fake frames versus real frames if it turns out that this is helping with this problem.
Yeah. And like, just to be clear, I don't think the fake frames are going to help in multiplayer games, because when you're talking about people who are playing at a high skill level, the thing you want to do is minimize the input to photon latency, like because one of the things that I didn't realize until I talked to people who played like competitive Counter-Strike and stuff like that years ago, out of my time in the PUBG community, because it turns out a lot of the big PUBG streamers are ex Counter-Strike pros, and the thing that they learned and did drills on to like build muscle memory for is moving the mouse past where they thought the headshot was and then bringing it back a couple of pixels, right? And it's to count. At the time, it was before G-Sync for a lot of these guys, so they were playing on monitors that had a fair amount of latency between the time the frame was rendered and it was displayed on the screen, and so they'd have to counter that with mechanical movements of their hands to snap on headshots in a game where one bullet from the right gun is an instant kill, right? Most of the games we play now competitively, like Fortnite and Apex and even COD, are not that kind of not that kind of single shot kill game. They're higher time to kill. So it's much more about applying consistent bullets and managing recoil and stuff like that, which is a completely different skill set. But still, often that first hit matters, and reducing that time is still going to be primary. And even like, and the things we're talking about here are Valorant and Call of Duty and those kinds of super fast, high skill, low time to kill games. I can't remember where I was going with this now, but the point is the pros are never going to turn on frame gen. You don't want frame gen in multiplayer because it adds latency to the place that you don't want latency in the pipeline. But for single player stuff, I'm really curious about what adding frame gen does and how it makes the game feel, and if we can get a visual way to measure, like a repeatable way to measure that impact, so that we can show, hey, this is exhibiting microstutter tendencies. Here's what we did to make the microstutter go away. And these are lessons you can apply to your machine at home to get a better experience playing games on whatever hardware you have. So
as a person who likes, concrete steps for what to do with information, it sounds like if I was just at home trying to troubleshoot my PC gaming experience, like this would be actually one of the first steps to take, as opposed to, I think like normally people, like if they encounter what they would call just generally like as a normie, like would call lag, right?
Yeah.
Or delay, or like, it's like hiccuping, right? That you would go into your settings and like start, as you said, dialing things down, right? Like dropping from ultra to high, or like turning off, or, downscaling, or like downgrading, anti-aliasing, stuff like that. But this sounds like it actually should be one of the first things that people try.
Well, it's nice because it gives you a baseline, right? You see where you start, and you get your 1% low numbers. You get a distribution of those frames, the variability between frames, and then you can see if the changes you're making have any impact. And because the loop on it is about a minute, right? You can run the benchmark for about a minute. You want to generally try to be in the same area of the game. So like, in a game like Star Wars Outlaws, where the outside renders pretty well most of the time, and the cities
I love
are
that you always go back to this game as your example. Look, it's so consistent.
It's kind of,
who hurt you?
Look,
we have the answer.
I actually look, the game reviewed really all over the place. It's not a great game. I like it a lot. It's the kind of Star Wars I like. It's like grungy 70s Star Wars, right? And it uses all the bells and whistles, and man, sometimes you feel it and sometimes it feels great. But it is the best example right now for, it is the antithesis of Doom the Dark Ages. If Doom the Dark Ages is, yo, look how good at frame pacing we are, Star Wars Outlaws is what's frame pacing, man. I've never heard of that before.
Vibes.
Yeah, it's bad vibes.
It's vibes.
All vibes. So yeah, I think this gives you a way to measure what the impact of your changes is. And that's the important thing. Like there's some settings that I always turn off in everything, right? I turn off motion blur in almost everything, unless I'm playing on the Steam Deck maybe, because I want crisp, clear visuals. I turn off depth of field. I'm sorry to all the developers who use depth of field as a way to minimize their performance impact and the memory loads.
Calling people out.
I want to see stuff far away, man. If I wanted depth of field, I'd watch a movie. Okay. The rest of it, like view distance in a battle royale, I'm always going to have view distance pegged at ultra, and I will turn everything down to the lowest possible setting if that's what it requires to do that, because being able to see somebody 100 meters further away than they can see me is a huge advantage to me in that game, right? That doesn't matter in Call of Duty because the entire map's like 35 square feet, and you're going to be able to see everybody no matter where they are in Call of Duty multiplayer, not Warzone, obviously. So it's not going to matter. And so I start with the things that I don't like, turn them off: motion blur, film grain, depth of field, a lot of post-processing effects I'm not a fan of generally because they make the image muddier and crappier. And then I'm gonna run this number, and I'm gonna look and see what I can tune to make those spikes and valleys go away. Yeah.
So Will doesn't like cinematic video games.
Look, man. I think I'm going to go and be honest. I think I'm done with portrait mode on the phone because the fake bokeh is annoying me so much. It looks so bad compared to real bokeh on a real camera.
I agree.
Yeah. Just
you know what? Some of us plebs just make do with what we've got, because actually using a camera that does it for real means you actually have to have skill with how you frame and focus things.
Yeah.
And That takes time, and I'm impatient.
Look,
I just want to press a button on my phone.
Back in my day, getting 24 tries at getting a good film composition cost me about $18 or something.
I remember those days.
Yeah, now it's free. I just fill up all that cloud storage, and never delete anything. It's great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to your future developments. I feel like there's also probably some great potential for how like we sitting more in this enthusiast space translate some of this for our normie friends, right? Because how many times you get a question saying like, "Hey man, like I just want to play this game and it doesn't feel good. Well, what card should I get?" And you're like, "Well, you can do this thing." And they're like, "That sounds complicated. I just want to put a credit card down." You know?
Well, but I think you also can have. I think you can also, hopefully this will get us to a place where people can start sharing their config, their learnings from this.
And how to do it faster.
And we can,
and how to automate
like,
it
instead
even.
of me starting from 0, I can start from what Rurutu's settings were, and then I can go from there.
Cool.
I don't know.
Speaking of upgrades, Brad, do you want to talk about a new card that's launched or launching? I should say?
Unfortunately, it's one we can't buy. Not that you can buy any of the graphics cards anyway. But we have a new Radeon 9070 card, the 9070 GRE, China exclusive card, launched, I think, the end of last week.
Ooh. What does GRE stand for this time, Brad?
I think they say Great Radeon Edition, Golden Radeon Edition now. It was the Great Rabbit, Golden Rabbit Edition the first time because it was tied to the Lunar New Year, but now they just say Great Radeon.
And I just I'm envisioning it like just the Great Wall of China, just like stacked, but like stacks of
it's
these.
just all video. This is where all the video cards are.
Just they form the bricks.
Yeah.
And that's why it's worth covering this, because like last generation 7900 GRE came out in China first, but then 6, 9, 12 months later, it went worldwide. So it's worth just kind of taking a look, seeing how it did. Since it's a Chinese-only launch, there were no U.S. or European reviews, really. It was mostly Chinese sites. The card itself has about 25% fewer stream processors than the 9070 XT.
So it's in between? Is that?
It's like under the it's under the 9070. This is the slowest performing 9070.
Okay.
So in China, where this launched, the equivalent is the 9070 and 5070, both launched at $625 US equivalent. This is $575, so this is $50 cheaper. And the TLDR is it's about $50 cheaper, less performance. It basically performs the exact same as the 7900 GRE did last generation. It's like identical, like 100.8% compared to the 7900 GRE's thing. It's about 5% slower than the 5070, and it still does pretty good in ray tracing, just like all the other 9070s do. So it's just like, feels like this card exists so that AMD can use further cut down 9070 dies and sell them somewhere. That's what it feels like this is. That's why I wouldn't be surprised I'm not surprised that this is launching in the Chinese market first. They're just dealing with the inventory that they have for these cut down chips, would be my guess. So yeah, it exists. It's fine. It's nothing particularly exciting. It's nothing particularly underwhelming, but it exists.
If this were to make it to our shores, who would you say this card is for?
If it stayed to somewhat current pricing, it would depend on pricing. Like when the 7900 GRE came out in the US, finally it was for a reduced price compared to when it launched in China. So if that happens, it would change things. But right now, I would rather have a 9070 or a 9070 XT all day. I'm not really sure who this is for. This is for people who can't get those at reasonable prices, maybe. Here's another option in the market using cut down dies. So if you're able to get it, if you're in China and you can't get your hands on other things, I think that's kind of what this is for.
Is it the same RAM configuration as the 9070 rather?
Close. It's 12 gigabytes of GDDR6, but it's at slower speeds.
Okay.
So
there's a
you still get plenty of capacity for 1440p gaming, 1080p gaming. You'd like to see 16, but 12 I'm fine with for this price class. But yeah, it's another 9070.
Just like the general vibe on this is just like shrug. This is for audio listeners who can't see Brad
Seems
actually
fine.
like half shrugging while he's talking.
Yeah, actually shrugging. Yeah. So the one takeaway I saw from the Chinese reviewers, they're surprised how well the ray tracing held up compared to the 5070. So AMD is definitely making steps forwards on ray tracing. We've seen that in our own 9070 tests, but apparently this one holds up particularly well. So yeah, if you're able to get your hands on these, if you're in China, can't get your hands on other things, you have another option now.
So it sounds like this again boils down to like what price can you get it at, right? So depending on the price, it's either good idea, or a bad idea to pick up, right?
Yeah, same as everything these days. Yeah. And I have no insight into how the Chinese market specifically actually works, so it's hard for me to really tailor advice there.
No, that's fair. I mean, I don't even know. Can they even watch this? Like, because I don't know what content actually they have access
I would
to.
Think so.
Right? So,
I would hope so.
Watching us Americans like talk about a market we don't know about.
Well, and I wonder, like, I wonder if this is tariff related stuff too. I know we talk about tariffs a lot over here. Like, welcome to the tariff show.
I know. I think we got a comment the other day. It's like, this show has gotten really depressing. Like, I don't know if I want to watch anymore. It's like, sorry, dude. Like, it's not us. We would love to have something more cheerful to talk about.
But yeah, I wonder if they rolled this out to China only because there's no tariff problems there.
Right, but I mean, also I imagine too that like just logistics are so much easier. You don't have to worry about shipping it outside the country. You don't have to worry as much about like the routing things a certain way, right? Yeah. Like even if this was going to just Europe and not the United States because of the U.S. fiscal policy stuff, like that's still like much further distance to get this stuff, right?
And are these are like full retail boxes? They're not just like white label boxes or anything.
Yes. And I wouldn't be surprised if these are targeting esports cafes, because like esports cafes buy GPUs by the bucket load over there in China, and say, hey, this is basically the same thing but $50 cheaper. $50 times 100 adds up quick.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense.
So if it's not just
70 GREs here, it exists if you're in China.
I wonder if Adam can bring one back from Taiwan.
Well,
I know it's not China, but
Well, I mean, it depends who you talk to. Depends who you talk to, Will. Let's not open that can of worms.
I apologize. I didn't say anything. Just move on. Let's talk about Microstutter some more. That sounds great.
Well,
geopolitical.
You know what? I was going to take a different direction because I was going to say like, well, if it's not just white box, does that mean that there's probably a waifu edition in there somewhere for Adam?
There's always a waifu version
for Adam. Adam, who asked me when I recently went to Asia to go look for waifu graphics cards.
Did you ask at the counter? Did you be like, hey, you got
know what?
Waifu
my
cards?
Japanese was not that good, so what I would just go into the store and like just capture a general sense of the vibes, and most of the vibes were just very straightforward.
Okay, if you go look for the body pillow place, or
but that's what I mean. Like the lot of the hardware stores were just very much like these little hardware stores, and you would just walk in, and it was just very straightforward. There wasn't a lot of extra accessories that like could put your build in a certain kind of vibe.
Do people still have like USB ashtrays for sale there? That was my favorite, like the air filtering
I didn't see
ashtrays.
that. I did find a couple places that were selling like those like really large like desk calculators.
Oh,
like what are they, like 5 inches by like 7 inches? Like they're large,
like the old timey ones.
Yeah, like where you would just sit there and I was so tempted. Like I don't process invoices anymore for my job, like part of the website. But as someone who used to, like that was so tempting. It was just ingrained in me. I was like, ooh, that would make it so much easier. Wait, I don't do that anymore.
Need to get one of the old school ones that has the paper going, like the old accountants back in the day.
That is such a satisfying noise.
Mechanical switches on those too, yeah.
So satisfying. I mean, I learned how to type on a manual typewriter, so the sounds like that are just so.
Look, if you want,
we're showing our age today.
If you want an old calculator, Electronics Flea Market in Saratoga is this weekend.
Again?
Yeah, it's once a month during the summer, April to September.
Nice.
So it's the second Sunday, except for May, because Mother's Day is the second Sunday. And look, they know how that would go.
I took my mom to Monster Jam this Sunday. We went and saw Monster Truck.
Your mom's so cool.
Your mom rips.
Take your mom to Monster Jam. They'll love it.
Wow.
My mom would not, but your mom is so cool. Every time you tell a story about her, I'm like, dang.
If
What'd you do for Mother's Day? Drink some Tall Boys and watch some Monster Trucks. I don't know.
Man, that is
Love it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
All right.
What else we got? Anything else exciting?
About
Nothing
cards?
about this, but this is actually a good segue into the next section.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we're talking about Taiwan. We may as well talk about Computex and how Adam is probably already eating candy off the floor right now.
Oh, dear.
Look, last time he went on an airplane, he found a CPU in his seat back compartment, and now
What?
What did he find? He found an AMD. I guess that was last year.
Are you serious?
No, I mean I am, but no, I'm not. It's complicated, Elena.
Oh.
But no. So he's on his way to Taiwan now.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
It is that time of year. It's earlier than normal.
It is.
Like 2 weeks earlier than normal.
Last year it was around late May, past what was
after Memorial Day. Usually.
After Memorial Day.
Yeah, usually it's after Memorial Day. It's usually
early June.
right early June.
Yeah.
But this year it's like 2 weeks early.
2 weeks early, yeah.
Yeah, so next week we have Computex, we have Microsoft's Build keynote, we have Google I/O, it's also Dell Tech World. So
what do you think?
Say a prayer for your beloved tech journalists.
Yeah.
We're going to be busy.
I was going to say Google I/O seems like it's pretty much always the same, but Microsoft's conference has been all over the place the last few years.
But here's the thing, and our colleague Mark Hochman pointed this out yesterday when we were chatting about it, where it's like with how much is going on with AI, I'm actually going to be tuning into Google I/O as well. And normally I don't, just because my phone like 3 times in the last 2 days, I swear, it was like, we're going to make you use Gemini now instead of Google Assistant. I'm like, please stop changing things without my permission. I don't want Gemini.
Barf.
Please stop. And so I think that there's going to be such an emphasis on this AI stuff. And I'm curious to see how that's going to spread across their products. Because, I mean, as a lot of people know from watching.
I think is the word I would use there.
You know, it's funny you say that because I was about to specifically talk about security, right? And so that's one of the things that I'm covering for the website, primarily what I'm covering for the website. And I'm really curious to see if anything comes up around that in their conversations around AI. Probably not, because it's not as glamorous as when you can say like, well, you can call this place and, you know, this will automatically sort through the phone tree for you, because that's the kind of stuff people want, and then it doesn't work that way.
It never works. Like it ends up just taking more time. So nobody anyway.
You know what AI needs to do? It needs to just go through Google search. Because let's put it this way, Google, I don't really want you to summarize everything in your search results by AI, but if you're going to do it, could you please like dig into those like 3 esoteric forums that actually tell me how to find a real human on a phone tree and just surface that? Because that's what I want AI to do for me.
Oh, man, I was telling my kid how much Google's AI overviews just suck in general. You can't believe what they say. We were looking for a specific episode of the older seasons of Kitchen Nightmares the other day. So I, typed in looking for this restaurant, Kitchen Nightmares. It gave me 4 seasons early on an episode number that didn't even exist. And I'm like, see, case in point, kid.
Yeah. Was it you, Will, who said that we shouldn't call them hallucinations?
No, we should just call them lies.
Yeah.
Truth in advertising.
Like we're totally, hold on. What's the word? What's the word when we stopped calling genocide and started calling it ethnic cleansing? It's the same thing. We're just kind of whitewashing the thing that it's doing that's bad. And I mean, obviously, AI lying to you is not as bad as genocide, just to be clear. But
I'm not laughing at the idea of genocide, to be clear. It's just
it's
you realizing that you have to clarify this.
I conflated 2 things that are wildly different impacts. But like there's my leader for worst trends so far this year is, hey, we have an AI product that nobody wants to use and nobody wants to pay for. So instead of just not selling that product anymore, what we're doing is requiring all accounts to use that product and splitting the difference in the AI upsell and the no AI version. So like Notion does this now. Notion, it used to be you had a no AI tier, and if you wanted to get the AI, which sucks, then you paid more. Weirdly, nobody paid for it after the free trial. So they're like, we're just getting rid of the no AI tier, and now everybody has to do the AI tier. And if you don't like that, you can use something else.
They do that with Microsoft 365
Yeah.
too. Nobody was upgrading, so they just increased everybody's price by $5 or something.
So here's I am not plugged into this side of this because I don't really, honestly, it's not as concerning to me what the business proposition behind all of this is.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering at this point, which is like, we've heard so much about the computational resources that this takes, right? Like just how much energy and like natural resources that go into using AI. And I'm almost wondering, it's like, are they forcing people onto it because they're basically doing a sunk cost fallacy sort of move?
Oh, 100%.
Or is it because they really think that they're about to hit some kind of breakthrough and they just need mine data for it, right? Because they're not getting the data they need if the users aren't participating in this.
I mean, I think it's both of those things, right? I think that they've sunk an incredible amount of money into this. There are definitely, like, I know people who are true, artificial general intelligence believers who think that we are 2 to 3 years away from a breakthrough. And coincidentally, a lot of them are people that were like, hey, we're 2 or 3 years away from a self-driving car breakthrough in like 2012. So, it's weird overlap there. I don't know. You can read in what you will, but like people definitely are true believers. Like there's definitely we just need to get more computation and we're going to get over the threshold and the computers will stop lying and by accident and start lying intentionally. And like, I guess that's great. I don't know. I'm pretty ambivalent about the whole thing. It seems kind of bad across the board. I mean, retreading old territory.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. Like my pet, no pun intended, actually, but my pet theory about or perception of AI right now is just that it's just like talking or like interacting with a really eager young puppy, where you're like, go bring me your slippers, and they bring you like a couch pillow, and they look at you like, did I do it? Did I do it? And you're like, well, you brought me something, buddy.
Half right. Yeah.
Good job. You understood that part of the task.
Yeah. And like, are we going to get to a point that it's useful? I don't know. This is one of the places that capitalism usually does well and lets the market decide, but it doesn't work if people keep just dumping more and more money in. Microsoft has put so much money into this at this point that like they need something to happen there, I think, because they've invested a Call of Duty in AI at this point, and
a Call of Duty into AI.
Yeah, it's 70 billion dollars, that adds 60, 70 billion dollars here, 60, 70 billion dollars there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money, Elena.
Pretty soon.
At
some point.
Yeah.
Well, the cool part about all the stuff going on next week is not just Google I/O, where I would not be shocked to find an AI mode added to the Google search page coming soon as part of Google I/O. So we'll see what happens there. But Computex actually is going to have some hardware, so I think that's worth talking about on here a bit.
Yeah. We were in the ramp up to getting there, and then we got sidetracked. So as we're learning, when I'm host, chaos rules, where I'm just like, any topic's great. Let's just talk about things.
Just assume it.
Elena for new Adam. Let the chaos reign.
My name is 2 letters away from being bad chaos, and I regret that my parents messed that up.
Bad chaos.
Well, you know what though? They gave you the option to fly incognito, because it's more satisfying when everyone thinks that you are just straight laced and like rule player, and then you're the one in the Hardware Hall of Fame suggesting that the Atom processor gets consideration.
They did sell a lot of those netbooks.
Just saying.
Yeah. So are they going to actually announce hardware at the Computex?
We'll see. It feels kind of like the world is still kind of like holding its breath and seeing what these tariffs impacts are, unfortunately. So I'm expecting to see kind of a lighter show. But there are definitely a bunch of rumors and stuff going around.
Ooh, we got to talk about rumors?
Yeah.
Brad, you're going to talk about rumors?
One's not a rumor.
Brad Rumors Charkis at it again.
It's gossip. Gossip and rumors, not the same.
I'm going to have to change my middle name from Danger now. Damn. The one that we know is that the 5060 is launching on May 19th, which is also the day of NVIDIA's keynote at Computex. So that will be here next week as hardware unboxed, and I think Jay's 2 cents and other people have covered. It doesn't look like we'll be having independent press reviews prior to that because of a lack of drivers. So
weird.
That'll get introduced, I would think, fully on the 19th. I don't know if we even know the full specs for this card yet. but it has 8 gigabytes of memory, so maybe don't buy it until you see those independent reviews. So boom, we're already going to have a new graphics card at Computex. That's great.
There's a lot of news about press not getting seated with boards before, or drivers before the people seem fairly upset about this. Is this unusual, Brad?
Yeah. That is unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's very uncommon to have hardware in your hands and no ability to test it until launch day. Very, very rare. We would love to have a 5060 review for you guys on launch day, but working under the same thing as everybody else.
And I think it's worth noting, we've said this many times before, but I think it's worth noting again that when you hear reviewers get salty about this, it's not because of a sense of entitlement. I mean, maybe, sure, like the one-off person possibly, but generally it's because when you're a hardware reviewer or in any kind of service journalism, you take that idea of like helping people and the masses really seriously. And so the idea that you can't get information into their hands so that they can be making informed decisions when they're buying or doing anything when it's relevant is very stressful. Like, it's distressing. So that's honestly where a lot of it's coming from, because also it puts a lot of pressure on you to try to get that information out as soon as possible, but you still want to do a good job with it. So then that creates this like high time pressure crunch that's stressful because you don't want to accidentally make a mistake while you're trying to help other people.
Yep. Yeah, reviews actually don't generate a lot of views or eyeballs or attention, no matter what category you're talking about. Like if we, as you were saying, the reason that we care about this is so people know what they're getting the day that they're available to buy. Like, that's the reason I would never spend 2 sleepless nights benchmarking a 5060, just to hit embargo, just to hit embargo. There's going to be 50 reviews of that. I could get way more page views the next day with a hot take based off of what everyone else wrote, and I'd never have to test anything. But the idea is to get information out there. But it looks like we won't have it for this card, sadly. So yeah, when that launches next week, seems like NVIDIA's tried to hide it. Maybe I would hide it from your brain until you see independent reviews as well.
I mean, this is just to be clear, this is the card that they announced in the bottom of another press release about some getting DLSS 4 features. Yeah, we talked about it last week.
Mech Warrior 5 Clans got DLSS 4. Oh, and we're out launching the 50s.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like a real ringing endorsement of the card by NVIDIA.
No. But it's not the only graphics card. We're expecting to see the AMD Radeon RX 9060. These names are so close together these days, it's really hard to say these real quick off the top of the head.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're also hoping to see the Radeon RX 9060 XT. There have been rumors flying around about these for a while. Earlier this week, when was this? May 9th. So yeah, end of last week, I guess. A couple XFX cards, 9060s XTs, actually showed up on Amazon. These were XFX custom models, so they might not necessarily correlate with the pricing of whatever AMD announces. But there was an 8 gigabyte version available for $449.99, so $450 for an 8 gigabyte version of the 9060 XT, and $520 for the 16 gigabyte version. It's said to have 3.3 megahertz clock speeds and a purported launch date of June 5th. So I definitely expect that to get announced, seeing as how XFX pages are accidentally showing up at Amazon already.
Can be some busy times for everybody who is at Computex then.
Yep, and that'll be a card we can actually, I assume, buy over here. So that will matter a lot more.
Yep.
So,
Okay, that's cool.
Hopefully we see that.
Anything on the Intel front?
On the Intel front, I'm not sure what we'll see. I think I'm actually more intrigued to Intel. We'll see. I think it might be a little bit too early to show next gen stuff.
Yeah.
They launched we might see something for laptops. Who knows? We usually see something for laptops out of them at Computex. But I'm actually more interested in the ARM space because the rumors are NVIDIA and MediaTek are going to use Computex to announce their first joint venture into consumer CPUs.
Ooh.
So an ARM-based MediaTek processor with NVIDIA graphics.
What does MediaTek do?
For MediaTek is like Qualcomm.
Oh,
They
Yeah, so they
make,
do ARM chips, but they a lot of times you'll see them in like lower end phones and Chromebooks.
okay.
Like you don't really hear a lot about them, but they're actually very pervasive
A big
in hardware.
A
Yeah.
big SoC banker.
Yep.
Cool.
And there's, according to Digitimes, which Digitimes, I don't know if it still does. It used to get a bad rap about being accurate sometimes, inaccurate other times, most notably around iPhone rumors. But Digitimes is based in Taiwan, and their computer vendor sourcing is excellent. So I always trust their reporting as far as computer vendor sourcing. And they just put out a report saying that these chips will probably be under the NVIDIA brand with N1 and N1X names. And the idea it's going to be hitting laptops. But it might take until 2026 for them to actually arrive. But the expectation is for them to get announced here at Computex. We might have NVIDIA making CPUs next week.
Is this because Qualcomm had an exclusive relationship for the Copilot stuff?
That was never officially confirmed, but yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
That never confirmed thing that even ARM CEO Rene Haas kind of said, yeah, we hear that exists, went away at the beginning of this year. So now we can have competition to Qualcomm on, Windows on ARM. So
interesting.
So do you think that's going to be competing in this exact same space for laptops, or do you think they're going to position themselves in a different kind of tier?
They said the N1X, the Digitimes report, N1X is high-end consumers and commercial markets.
Okay.
N1C is, I guess, what it's called for consumer platforms. So C apparently means consumers. I'm really curious to see where they go with it. Like, I would, think that they're going to lean on NVIDIA's graphic prowess and have some sort of really baller integrated graphics.
That'd be nice.
MediaTek does make some Chromebook processors, but doesn't have too much experience in the Windows space because, again, Qualcomm's been pretty much exclusive since that launched. So I think it'll really depend on these two new entrants into the CPU market and how well they gel. It's going to be a first-generation platform, so I'd expect teething pains, but I'm all for more competition. And I think NVIDIA wanted to get into CPUs a long time ago, and Intel basically shut that down. So real curious to see what happens here.
Yeah, I feel like it was, if I'm remembering right, even with the first gen teething pains when Qualcomm first started pushing into space, we still saw some pretty good gains around battery life, if I remember right. So, I mean, this could be a great thing for that subset of people who aren't using a lot of actual local applications, and they're doing a lot of stuff in the cloud, or they're just mostly browsing, and for them, like, battery life is going to be their primary concern. So even just having that, plus the more chips that are running that aren't x86, that means that software developers actually also have to pay attention to that a little bit more too. Because that was the biggest issue. Like, I don't know how many of you remember, but I still have a Surface RT sitting in a drawer because I feel so bad for it.
Well, that's the best place for it. You can't hurt anybody there.
But see, the thing is that thing was never given a chance to live. I always felt so bad for it.
It had a lot of chances.
No, it did not. It didn't deserve the fate that it got.
It had no soul.
Yeah.
It didn't deserve the fate that it got.
I
it was just
could
hardware.
not disagree more.
No, it was. Oh, we can make that. We can make that one of the
Yeah.
the little fate sessions we have on the show. But like, I think that just never got a chance to live.
I'm stoked. I'm stoked to see NVIDIA coming back into CPU land. I assume that this is the end around the EU or the UK, whatever, the anti-competitive thing that prevented them from buying ARM a few years ago. And this is probably the first post sale fail product that we'll see out of that, which is exciting.
Yep.
So.
They actually, I forget the name of it. Let me see if I can find the name. I'm not sure, but they actually already announced a big thing at GTC, or maybe it was CES, where they're making their own chips with MediaTek already. So they're already priming the pump in the, the big business space. This is going to be like the consumer knockdown. So I'm excited. NVIDIA plays to win. So,
well,
Really curious to see what they can bring.
Look, maybe this means we're going to see a new Shield TV, guys.
You can see this on Will's. Like I saw it pop up on Will's screen before he started talking about it, and I was like, "Yeah, that's probably." Honestly, that's where my brain went to with the Tegra chips and like where they were put. Right? Was it 10 years ago at this point?
They did an update a week ago. It's the first update in a while.
I'm honestly surprised that they're still supporting it. I think it's great that they're still supporting it because they don't have to. So many companies just make a thing and then just dump it overboard after like 5 years.
Yeah.
They still got to keep it up for Nintendo. Might as well keep their Shield TV up. It's still like the fastest thing around.
Yeah, it's great though, because again, some companies, and I think it's honestly a testament to how much money NVIDIA has, where they're like, yeah, we can keep this division going, right? Because so many times like companies are like, well, we can't support that division because we need to put the resources elsewhere, and NVIDIA's like,
Like
may as well.
This is where Gordon would come in and be like, the Shield people have just, as the offices have moved around, they just moved further and further away from where anybody would notice, and just nobody who
they're in that part of the office building.
The facilities person on the map has to there be dragons, and it's like 4 people cranking out Shield TV updates every other year.
There's just like barbed wire around their cubes, so like no one approaches, so they can't actually dismantle like any of
human waste zone or whatever. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's exciting. I guess the other part I want to see out of this, I'm not sure if I've seen any rumors out of this, but something I am intrigued to see is at last year's Computex, Qualcomm teased like, hey, we're going to have these Snapdragon PCs and all kinds of form factors. We hope to have desktops and stuff in the future. I haven't seen any rumors about it. I haven't talked to Qualcomm, but especially if NVIDIA is coming out with its own chip potentially at this Computex, this would be a great time to announce Qualcomm-powered little desktops, because like a little Mac Mini kind of thing powered by a Snapdragon processor would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, nothing more fun than trying to get Linux running real good on an ARM processor. That's what with NVIDIA graphics even. It's like a double whammy of pain and suffering.
You know what, though? I will say for of any group that's going to undertake such suffering, the Linux group is prepared.
I mean, just to be clear, Linux people don't yell at me. I know you can do it, and I know you just have to get the right distros and then all that stuff set up. But like you're one layer of difficulty deeper, and then the NVIDIA graphics on top of that.
I think that's actually appealing to that group. Like, why else would you use Linux?
Linux people are masochists?
I didn't go that far. I'm just saying that I think they have a high tolerance to pain.
Well, Linus Torvalds apparently just did like a 6-month-long experiment trying to use a quiet keyboard, a membrane keyboard, to avoid the noise.
Oh my!
And he just announced, "Hey, I'm throwing this in the garbage can and picking up my clickety-clack mechanical."
Good for him.
But why? Why did he want it to be silent? Why didn't he just use silent switches?
I have no idea. I didn't just saw the thing, but Linux people can adapt.
He's killing a lot of old things too, finally, right? Like what I just saw the report about 486 processors finally losing support in Linux.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I mean, props to them for supporting it for that long.
I mean, that's kind of crazy. I didn't realize that they still had that in kernel support for that processors that ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just this week they're cutting it.
Like, here's the thing. Like, I talk some smack about Linux users, mostly because I'm just so grumpy about how No, I think it's a great operating system. I just think that when you market it in a certain way and you lie about how easy it is, it's not okay. That's all I'm saying.
Wow, there's a Taylor Swift song about you.
There's probably albums about me.
Look, fair.
And Linux, okay.
You and Jake Gyllenhaal all the way down.
Who wore the scarf better?
Look, I don't want to talk about the scarf, okay? I went to that concert. There were so many scarves, red scarves everywhere. Anyway.
So real quick, so we're expecting, as Brad said, like hardware to be to see Computex, but what do you think about availability? Like will that with what's going on right now in the world, the impact of it, will it delay or
so
TBDs?
There's actually a real example of this, right? And I'm actually a little heartbroken about it, which is that Height actually had reached out to us before all this tariff stuff really started blowing up, and they were like, come see us at Computex. And then they were like, well, we can't sell certain things in the US anymore, right? They're still having their appointment, right? Mm-hmm. So basically it means that if you're a US media person and you go there and you take this appointment, you're basically showing all of your viewers in the US something they can't have at least for now.
Well, when you shoot that video,
it might be a little different now that tariffs are set to 30 instead of
30% is still pretty chunky.
It's huge, but you can plan around that. So we'll see. I'm a little more optimistic today than I was 2 days ago.
Isn't that 30% thing still only a 90-day
it's
pause?
It's only
though?
a 90-day reprieve.
Yeah,
so
the folks I saw talking about 90 days were like, you might as well not have done the change as do 90 days because nobody's going to plan around your insanity.
Because I think, because especially at this point, people are so skittish probably about what's going to change next, what's going to happen now.
I would expect to see the kind of things we just talked about, the high-level NVIDIA chips, if those get announced. You know, these graphics cards would come to the U.S. I'm real curious to see how many of the things we see announced at Computex aren't announced for the U.S. first. Because usually it's Europe who gets stuff last. Sorry, Europeans, but more times than not, like, it comes to the U.S., it comes to Asia, it goes to Europe. In that order. But just this week, Samsung announced I forget 500 hertz OLED panel, the first one of its type.
Oh, I got to get one of those in.
I would love one.
Yeah.
After Will just said, he's like, you don't really need anything above 360 if you're not competitive.
There were plenty of caviats there.
I had enough caveats. I want that
speed.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still want it. Don't get me wrong.
I can't afford a 34-inch CRT. Are you kidding? My desk won't hold that. It'll collapse.
I really
gotta
miss
stop
my
shopping at IKEA, man.
Monitor.
Oh yeah, right.
But like that monitor got announced, and it's only going to initially shop like right in the region where it's being made, like Korea, Singapore, China. And I'm curious to see if that's maybe a harbinger of some of the announcements that we'll see out of Computex.
I think it's going to be a real shock for Americans when we aren't the primary market for new stuff, and it's going to take some adjusting to. As long as and I think Arcane in the chat said it doesn't matter what the tax level is if it keeps changing and it's just temporary. No businesses are going to risk buying anything. I mean, I'll say most. I think there's some places that will work on short enough timelines that this works, but like. A person I talked to the other day that makes keyboards was like 90 days doesn't do anything for me because that like I'll be midway through production when that ends if I start today, and then who knows how whether I'm going to be able to sell those keyboards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Deal doesn't go through. It's back at 145%.
And
you're bankrupt.
Friend of the show, Falcon Northwest, probably that's Kelt. Hello. It's pointed out too that there's, especially if we're talking about cases and other things, you still have the materials tariffs that still stack on the 30%. So it's not as cheap as cheap, quote unquote here, air quotes, sounds like in terms of reductions. It went from like wholly insane ludicrous to like ludicrous.
It went from.
Oh,
go ahead, Will.
No, you.
No, you go. Oh,
so polite, everybody. I love this.
Elena brings it. You've classied up the whole joint here. So, I was just gonna say, I think. Now I was so polite, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Me too. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're gonna see is that people are just not going to engage with this market until the uncertainty settles down.
So,
I'm curious to see both. Will things be announced for the U.S., as I just said, but also things that are announced? Like usually, so CES is where dreams happen. Like CES is where everyone brings their prototypes. These are the cool, weird, rad stuff like engineers. Yeah. Engineers are thinking, no launch date because 90% of it never shifts. Computex is where you see the stuff that's getting sold this year for the holidays and back to school. So I'm real curious to see, one, not just will these products be announced for the US, but two, are they even going to bother putting prices on them for now if they are announced for the US? Right. So it's going to be a real weird week.
Yeah.
I'm curious also about like what's going on. If Intel's Panther Lake, we assumed we would see it Computex this year. They've had some scene drama with new CEOs and a bunch of stuff going on over there. And I'm like 18A, which is the process Panther Lake's on, was they seemed to be feeling pretty optimistic about it through the end of last year and the first part of this year. And I haven't seen a lot of optimistic sounding communications about that lately out of Intel. So we'll see if we have a CEO standing up on the stage holding up a chip, or if we're actually going to see some chips and have dates and stuff attached to them. Since they're not having a keynote, I think it's probably, I don't think we're going to have a CEO standing on stage holding up a chip. But we'll see.
It just seems like it's going to be a pretty quiet Computex.
Yeah.
Because normally it feels like I have not yet attended the show, but even when I'm not directly in the line of fire, there's usually a sense of like activity and like how bustling it is in terms of like the lead up from the team that is going, in terms of like appointments they're taking, plans they're making around like video content or, you know, written content for our website. And it just seems so still this year.
Yeah.
And I think it was probably going to be a quieter Computex in general, but the fact that I'm not really feeling like there's a lot of push towards hearing about other things related to PC building, like new fans, new cases, new coolers, just makes me kind of think that in general, like as Brad was saying, at most the highlights are going to be around like these bigger chip announcements, things that like go into other things that we maybe aren't necessarily going to get our hands on, like laptops, tablets, phones, things like that, as opposed to the stuff that we really love and care about as PC builders, or people who at least follow the PC building enthusiast hardware space.
Yeah, we expect it to be slower than normal, enough so that we actually like reduced our staffing. Like you just saw Adam flying to Taiwan, but we actually decided to send some less people than we were expecting because I think it's just gonna kind of be slower than usual.
Well, and I wonder how many meetings he's going to go into with cameras ready to go. And they're going to come out, they're going to be like, okay, here's our stuff for the US market. And it's like just an empty table with a couple of toothpicks on it. And then like,
it's just a piece of paper with a sad face.
Yeah. Like, are we going to have a lot of Adam covering stuff that's not available in the US with Sarah McLachlan songs playing in the background? Or
save the puppies.
Yeah.
Save the kitties.
I will remember.
You know what, Adam, if you're still in the chat, I think if you do go into appointments and you don't see anything, you should just have a series of like, I guess over there it's gonna be A4 paper, where you just have a piece of white A4 paper and you just use a Sharpie and you just put a sad face.
Well, it's like Debbie Downer, right? It's like, oh, where's this going to be available? Europe, wah wah, and then it just smash cuts to Adam with the sad face. Yeah, like there's all sorts of ways we can cover this.
Oh, now you're giving me ideas for camera work.
There you go,
Yeah,
Willis.
there you go.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
The question, I wonder if it's going to be grim, and I also wonder. Like last year, Gordon and I kind of jokingly, we didn't actually do it because we would have had to have our stomachs pumped. We joked about doing the AI, the drinking game. Every time
you'll die.
AI.
You'll die.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do it. Not going to
die.
Do it. Yeah. So, but I wonder if we're going to have that much AI talk, or if it's starting.
I think there's going to be a ton of AI talk still. Oh yeah.
I mean, because the Copilot stuff they were really excited about last year, and that was all AI driven, and it fizzled. So how many times are we going to do the dance before you know, clearly the software vendors and OpenAI and the people in Anthropic and all the people that have invested billions of dollars into this have a lot to lose. But the laptop vendors were looking for sales bumps that haven't happened so far. So are they going to keep riding the AI train that has failed once now for real? And are they going to try again? Or are they going to, like, when will they give up on AI as a thing that will sell consumer and business machines?
I mean, I think that my personal opinion is that that's going to be related to the relationships they have with the companies that are pushing AI, right?
Well, that's
like,
true.
Right. So like, let's say that you are a laptop manufacturer and you have a partnership with Microsoft, right? For Copilot related stuff. I mean, I don't think, at least it's kind of like in any relationship, when you're in public, you're not going to show the cracks in the relationship. You're going to be negotiating that behind the scenes, right? Where you're probably, if you're not seeing the sales that you need from this, you're going to go back to your partner and say like, hey, I know that you're really bullish on this, but it's not moving our numbers. Like we need to talk about like how we get to market our products because we have to make our numbers, right?
So you're saying they're going to keep talking about it and being really excited about it right up until the point that the co-marketing dollars dry up for Microsoft.
I mean, I kind of see it that way. Maybe I'm just
right.
Maybe I'm just jaded at this point in my career, but I think that's realistically how long we're going to hear it from the hardware side. So as long as that software money and those partnerships are happening, I think that's where we're going to get that push. Do I think that we are going to see less of an appetite for it? Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't know like how long those contracts are, like what the terms are, what they're talking about in the background. You know, it could be also that they might need that as at least a talking point as well, because if you can't do a lot of stuff around hardware, if you're having to change what your logistics are for what markets you're shipping into and what products and not being able to put a price on things, it's kind of like, look over here, AI. Yeah. Look over here.
Shiny.
Yeah, exactly. I could see that happening
I'm curious to see if the timing between build and this is on purpose. Like maybe Microsoft will announce a whole raft of new features for Copilot, and that's the reason they're starting that on Monday. And then once the Computex announcements start really rolling out on Tuesday, maybe they'll highlight those.
Didn't Microsoft Recall just ship? Isn't it shipping now?
Just shipped. Yeah. We recommend turning it off. It's not worth.
I thought it was supposed to be opt-in by default, right?
It is, but we just recommend not using it.
Yeah.
But they need something. They don't have a killer app yet. And I think that's the issue. If Microsoft can come up with some sort of killer app and reveal it, it'll make a difference. But I get the sense that more vendors and stuff are pushing more towards the battery life improvements and stuff more than AI these days.
Yeah.
I think if we are going to hear about AI, it also is going to be, I think we had an article about this on the site, right? Where it's like AI helping with managing battery life is pretty cool. So it could be also that the talk we hear related to AI in hardware is going to be more about optimizations and ways that actually are improving the user experience, as opposed to just like, hey, you can do a search on your computer and it can tell you everything that you saw in the last 3 days, even though you didn't want to remember some of that stuff.
Oh no, yeah, I don't want it to see what I see on the computer. That's bad. But do you think this is going to be like when they added AI optimizations to my BIOS and then it killed 2 or 3 13900Ks for me, or is that like it's too soon?
That's what we're going to find out.
Too soon.
I am curious though. Just how long we're going to have this disconnect between, because we've talked about this on the show. I think pretty much a lot of people who are talking in the comments have the same opinion about AI, which is like, like we don't care about this. We're not seeing any like useful applications for the amount of publicity it's getting. But man, every time I'm hanging out with people who are not in our space, they're always saying things like, yeah, I got a recipe for this like based off ChatGPT, or
how much soap does it have?
Like what?
How much soap does it include?
Right. And it's like, and they are so into it. And I don't know if it's because also it's the fact that I live in the San Francisco Bay Area where there's a lot of people who are just very gung-ho about new technologies, and they can forgive so many of the little foibles and flaws that you see. But I mean, I was at a potluck of all places, and people are like, yeah, like I came up with a salad because, I asked it for like these ideas and it just told me to do this. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I'll just change this out. And that's pretty nice. I'm just like, you and I live in very different universes.
I'm really curious what Brad's experience is interacting with normal human beings in New Hampshire and the greater Boston area, and if he has the same experience there that you're having here.
Not anywhere to the same degree, it sounds like, as you guys do, but there's definitely people will chat GPT things instead of searching them and stuff now. And I see that in bars when I go hang out. I see, people hang out, but not anywhere to the level it sounds like. I was just in San Francisco, I guess, a few weeks ago, last month.
Yeah.
I saw a lot more of that going on in San Francisco than I do in New Hampshire, but it does definitely exist even here in tiny New Hampshire.
I find that when I talk to people who are talking about that, and I explain to them how it actually works, then they're shocked. When I'm like, hey, it's just a really complicated way to set probabilities of the next word in the sentence, and based on that, and they're like, wait, that's really all it's doing? I was like, yeah, it just takes the average of all the sentences that you would have constructed and spit something out.
Yeah.
And they're
I do the same thing. Try to be the evangelist.
Well, and then I'm like, yeah, and also it's the equivalent of like filling in a couple of square feet of wetland every time you ask a question, or chucking a kitten into a wood chipper. And then they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, each ChatGPT query is like 5,000 times a Google query without AI. And they're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So I don't get invited to barbecues anymore. Is the TLDR?
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't use the kitten in a wood chipper.
I find it's very evocative and helps.
I mean, it is evocative, but
concepts.
it just. Whew.
Look, is your potato salad recipe worth chucking a couple of kittens into a wood chipper?
But here's the thing: people don't care because they're not actually watching. I don't want to use this analogy anymore. I like kittens too much. They're not actually watching the marshlands get filled in, right? Because they're like, I actually had somebody write a quick blurb for me for something I was doing publicly. And I was like, hey, you did a really great job. And they're like, oh, I just fed into ChatGPT. And I was like, oh. And they were so satisfied about it, where they're like, I didn't have to write anything. And I was just like, this is why there's such a difference. Like, we are a group that's like, we don't like fake frames, right? Meanwhile, other people are like, yeah, fake frames, fake words.
I'm on
Give
team
it to
fake
me.
frames. for what it's worth.
I do
I
think
like fake friends.
so here's the we did have this talk, right? This is a bit of a tangent. I'm trying not to do too much chaos here, but I do think it's hilarious the side conversation people are having. I didn't know this was a thing.
Chaos, Lena.
Where people were saying on Reddit, they're like, "Oh, I can tell text has been AI generated because it uses M dashes."
Oh yeah, and there's a couple of words too that they don't.
And I
like.
was like fascinated by this because, you know, so many of my writer friends on social media that I'm on were like, I can't give up my M dashes just because I don't want to seem like AI. And I was like, and I realized, I was like, there's a reason why this is a tell, because it's been training on our work.
Yeah.
We're the ones who use M dashes. That's why it's using M dashes.
If you ask Catherine what her number one piece of feedback was on Maximum PC content from the time in the 10 years that I worked there, it was, yo, there's too many M dashes in this article. Use some commas or something.
No, there's never.
And yeah, it's because it's all trained on our fancy dashes.
Yes. It's hilarious that we as writers are going to be thought of as fake writers because this tool was trained
because they stole
on
the stuff that we did
trained
and
on
used
our
it to, yeah.
work.
Look, I an M dash, for folks who don't know,
It's the long one.
Yeah, it's a dash that's the length of an M. That's why it's called an M dash in the ligature on the font. There's also an N dash, which is shorter. Mm-hmm. People use those wrongly all the time, it turns out.
People don't use them anymore.
No, that's true too.
I mean, if you want to get into the weeds of writing and editing, your M dash is basically what you do to set off like a clause or like a phrase or a specific sentence you want to put some emphasis on, right? So like a parenthetical is kind of similar, offsetting it by commas, but it has just a certain different flavor to it, which is why we writer types love it so much.
Usually... The choice for me on M dash or comma.
Here, Will and I are going to start waxing poetic about M dashes.
The choice for me on M dash versus comma is how divergent is the parenthetical from the rest of the sentence.
Yes.
And if it's like a big aside, M dashes. If it's just like explaining a phrase that's already there and it's pretty well connected and doesn't feel like it should probably be a different sentence entirely, then it gets commas.
And if you don't want to sweep it kind of in the background, then you or if you do want to sweep into the background, then it gets actual parentheticals because you're just like, there's a little context for you, but you don't have to read this if you don't want. You can skip over it if you want. So welcome to the world of writing.
Yeah.
and N dash for the record.
Yeah. How do you feel about this, Brad?
For numbers.
I never went to journalism school. I never finished high school. I couldn't understand half the words that you guys just used. People file me stuff and I can say, hey, this looks great. Reads awesome. Go with it. And I'm like, hey, this sentence is kind of messed up. I don't know why, but you should fix that.
I mean, look, the reason I didn't have to do any writing classes in college is because I had an English teacher that was like, you talk good, just write like you talk.
Amazing.
Teach.
Yeah, and it was incredibly useful information because I didn't take any writing classes in college, and somehow my entire career has been about communication and writing. So
that was opposite for me. I was just like, I like words.
No, all the journalism school kids were weird, so I did science classes.
I didn't do journalism.
Yeah.
I just stuck my nose in the book and never came out. Anyway, Computex.
I have to get out of here in like 10 or 15 minutes.
So we should do a couple of questions.
We should do some questions. Like, we can basically say like, are we expecting any live commentary casts, or are we doing a show at Computex, Willis? Like, let us know. Like, let the people know what to expect for next week.
For Computex?
Yeah.
Yeah. So next week will be Computex, and it's not going to be there'll still be a podcast. It's not going to be on the regular scheduled program. TBD on time and date on that yet. So Adam will fill us in on that. But be sure to subscribe and smash that like button and get all the notifications on that. So yeah. And
then I think we're doing keynote live streams for NVIDIA and AMD, I think is what we decided. I'm not exactly sure if we decided to do ARM or not. I can't remember where we ended up. I got to talk to Adam at some point and confirm.
All right. I'm not sure. So.
Is it you two? Are you two doing a drinking game?
Well, so May 18th, which is Sunday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, would be a little bit late for Brad. So I need to find somebody to sit down on that with me.
I might be available. I'll message you about my availability.
We can talk about it offline.
Yeah. So don't forget, it's a 15-hour time difference in Pacific time and then 12-hour time difference for East Coast time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And then the other one is AMD, which is I think the Tuesday morning, maybe I can't remember. But we'll
like
we'll
very
get
early PT though.
Yeah, and we'll put live events up on the channel well in advance, so you know when they're going to be there, and you can like hit the thing that gives you the reminder.
Cool.
Basically.
You know you have a rocking team when this is the first I've heard of any of this. This sounds great. Kill it.
It was fun talking over the keynotes because there's a lot in these keynotes that like probably the full nerd audience doesn't care a lot about, and we can talk about the stuff that is interesting during those kind of lull times, and then pick up from there.
And last year, I remember doing this last year, doing it during CES. I got quite a few people actually show up to chat in these.
Yeah.
The PC enthusiasts especially, because you can just sit here and chat and nerd out rather than listening to all the crap about Congress and medical stuff. So
it's fun.
Well, it's
plan on watching the keynotes. Come hang out.
Yeah, it's a place where our keynote chat is a little bit less raucous than the live keynote chat, just because this is a place where the mid-sized stream is better than the enormous stream because you can actually have a conversation.
That's a great word. Yeah, so we actually can see your chats. They don't go flying by. Also, we will probably have periodic announcements where it's like, if you want to watch the show without us talking, please go to the official stream.
Yeah.
Inevitably, we get somebody who's like, will you stop talking?
Why are you talking
over them?
I wanted to know about the AI metaverse, Omniverse for my factory. I'm like, well, you're in the wrong place, bud.
All right.
So I got
questions.
So Q&A. If you guys have any questions live on the chat right now, please add us at the Full Nerd, and we'll check it out. And then over on Discord, you can also leave a Full Nerd question to us, and we'll get back to you on that if you missed the live Q&A. Yeah. I have one real quick that will let's see if that'll get you guys started. And so you guys ready?
Yeah, hit me.
We are, but is there I will actually say, because Brad has to go, are there any Brad specific questions that we should pop to him first? I am ready for this question though. I was warned about it.
As with a blank screen, I'm sorry about that, but
no, it's cool. I mean, you are in the future, so your future includes quitting time.
Yeah, I got one. Let's see here. Not directly to Brad, but Brad definitely chime in on this. From friend of the show, Master Procrastinator. How do you expect the U.S. import tariffs to affect us here in the EU? Will China and other dump whatever they manufacture at a cheaper than before in the EU, or will they raise their prices here to make up lost revenue due to smaller margin than they make now in the U.S.?
That's hard.
It is hard. I think we're going to see a mixture of things. Like we will, I think, see, better deals in some cases in the EU. I think it'll depend on the size of the company. It makes a lot more sense for Height, as they've gone on Gamers Nexus, did that excellent breakdown. If they can ship a bunch of cases to the EU, keep the same price, great. They can stay in business. But once you start talking about great big freaking companies, that's when the pain gets spread out. We're already seeing it with the Xbox price raises. Like the hit to the US is such a big group of buyers comparatively versus the rest of the world that the big companies need to spread the pain out to overcome the losses in the US. So I think we'll see a mixture of good prices in the EU for the companies that really, really need it. But on the hot side, we're going to see Sony, we're going to see PlayStation, we're going to see Xbox raise prices for everybody, would be my guess.
I think, just jump on that real quick, I think that's also a function of what their markets look like, right? So like if they are a company that was leaning really hard into the US market, they may not be able to do much with their prices, or it might have to go up so that they can, reforecast, get some stable ground for themselves. But like in talking to some of my sources when I was talking about tariffs with them, if they're in a position to cushion because maybe they're not quite so deeply exposed to the U.S. market, then it might actually work out well for somewhere like the EU. Right, because they can just lean harder into it, or maybe they might decide that and again, it's like also do they decide that they want to have more like market share compared to maybe some like local companies, right? So maybe before they were just like, oh, we never paid much attention to Europe because they already had these established players, but now we're going to try to muscle in more because we need that market share. So that could also affect if prices go down, because again, usually when you're a new entrant into a market, you want to try to get people to come to you, and that usually means lower prices, so that entices them.
The people I've talked to that work in this space described what we've done as a country to the global market as a singularity that you can't really look beyond and make accurate predictions on.
Yes.
And then they specifically cited, hey, a lot of Canadian electronic stuff actually comes through Seattle and Long Beach because the cost of moving items across the Canadian-U.S. border was incredibly low. So they'd shipped all of their North American stuff into the U.S. and then distributed it out to Canada and Mexico from there. And now all of those supply chains have to change for like admittedly small markets in Canada and Mexico. But like, who knows? There's no way to predict.
And then there's also the question, as someone rightly just pointed out in chat, which is like, how does the currency situation influence it too, right? Like if the dollar is at a certain strength versus other areas and so on and so forth, that also is going to be a factor as well.
Yeah, it's a unprecedented times.
Yeah, so for me, this is actually unprecedented. We have seen pandemics before.
There's actually, I saw from, what was it? LMG Clips, the clips they do of the WAN show, Linus's WAN show. There was one called The Tariffs Got Even Worse that I watched recently, that if you're interested in this kind of nerdy supply chain stuff is really worth watching, because Linus and Luke dig deep into the fact that, hey, we now have a global storefront and a U.S. storefront. Here's what it costs in Canada. Here's what it costs in the U.S. And they even go into details about how before the way taxes worked out, the U.S. customers were basically subsidizing cheaper shirts for Canadian and overseas buyers because of the way it all worked out. Now it's flipped. They have to charge more in both regions, and like the Canadians actually have to somewhat subsidize the U.S. people, so they don't have to make the U.S. shirts $45. They can make them $30 instead. So it's a big, complicated mess.
Yep.
It's worth watching if you're interested in that. The tariffs got even worse. LMG Clips.
I guess I'm shopping in Toronto then.
Yeah, no more than $800 though.
Yeah, you're doing the customs thing is still okay.
Was it 800 or 10,000? I forgot. No.
The 10,000 number you're thinking is
cash.
Currency before you have to declare.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Why you carry that much cash? I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Look, you gotta tape it to your leg with aluminum foil around the outside to block
that
the
dude in
signal.
China who tried to like import CPUs by just taping it to his body. Like I saw that story when it came out, and I was just like, you know what, it's crazy, but I gotta kind of respect the attempt, you know.
There was a good one of somebody trying to smuggle some kind of animal through customs that had a bunch of, I think it was birds. I can't remember. It was insects. But yeah, anyway, don't smuggle. Smuggling is bad.
No smuggling.
It's going to cause down. You don't want to get stuck in
that's the one model you shouldn't do is always be testing the customs and TSA.
Yeah, don't always be
Don't mess
testing the
with them.
border patrol people. They're not to be
They're
messed with.
not. Yeah.
Let's do one here from friend of the show, Sneaky. When the dust settles for the AI gold rush, what would be the new norm for PCs? What does the post-apocalyptic world look like for PC gamers?
Man.
Brad?
This was a singularity event, according to what Will was saying. I'm not going to try to predict something like that far into the future. If you look at stuff like G-Assist and stuff like that, maybe your games will play themselves. Who knows with all this AI
It's just your own personalized Twitch stream, local.
Yeah.
That actually kind of sounds soothing, honestly.
What if instead of saying "what up, chat," they say "what up, Elena"?
Creepy.
Yeah, it's just for you, or it's for everybody named Elena, I guess technically.
There's not a lot of us. It's always actually a little strange when I see somebody else with the name make online comments because I'm like, that's me, but not me.
I don't have that problem.
You had to learn that lesson young. Any others?
I think Brad's answer is right. I don't think we can predict this. I think if we're in 5 weeks when there's nothing on store shelves and chaos reigns in U.S. markets, who knows?
Yeah, I am actually wondering what's going to happen at this point because I think, the question was about AI, right? But we're just very focused on the tariff stuff because of what it means for us, right? And even with this 90-day reprieve or reduction, that doesn't change what's already been shipped to the U.S.
Nothing.
And what's been in production, right? Because also I think production got scaled back as well.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be a difficult summer ahead for us.
Yeah, you're seeing things like people who have small shops that do, shoes and clothing and stuff like that. Like it's going to hit across all fronts just because
it's going to be rough.
Even if your product's not made in China, often the packaging or the materials that go in the packaging, like there's all sorts of other downstream consequences.
And it's just worrying too for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, right? Because it's like they need a steady cash flow.
Yeah.
So like even if there's demand but there's no supply, how are you going to keep your doors open?
If you don't want us to talk about stuff that's a bummer, don't ask these kinds of questions, maybe.
Yeah, I don't predict the future anymore.
Who
knows?
Like I will say though, I don't think AI is going to save us all. So that's one prediction I'm going to make.
Yeah. I think the AI bubble popping may have really interesting downstream consequences because maybe for the first time ever, compute will get cheap. Like if you look at what happened in the early 2000s when online storage got really cheap, it powered everything from like, the Slack space in Google's compute cluster they used for search in the early 2000s gave everybody a gigabyte of storage in Gmail and made online cloud storage inexpensive and all these other interesting downstream consequences. Podcast hosting used to be really expensive and now it's like $15 a month for basically as much as you want. And like if the AI bubble pops, then maybe some really like interesting novel applications of massive amounts of compute in the cloud that suddenly have no market demand could mean that like really amazing things happen on video game servers and stuff like
maybe.
Who knows?
I mean, I'm hoping for the positive stuff. Maybe I shouldn't say what I'm thinking because then we're going right back into the dark times.
Yeah.
Folding at home will have its day in the sun yet.
Yeah.
Hey, folding at home did good. Like they contributed to the vaccines that we don't have here anymore. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
now imagine if you managed to unload all these server GPUs and get them all pointed at something like that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I often think about the guy in 2010 that was like, "Hey, you have a lot of GPUs. Have you heard about this Bitcoin thing?" Yeah. I told him I don't do any of that stuff anymore. It's all scams. Whoops.
Yeah. We could. I had to avoid all that stuff because of ethical reasons. Because I review GPUs, so I shouldn't be writing about things you mine on GPUs for profit. So I would report on it, but I never did any of that stuff. And I could have been so rich right now.
He literally had
maintained my journalistic integrity.
This is why I think it's hilarious when people just drop into comments for a lot of journalists and they're like, "You're on the take. AMD bought you."
If I was on the take, I'd have a nicer house.
And it's just like, do you think I would be doing this job if I was actually had that much kind of money? Like there'd be no reason for me to keep up pretenses. I would just get a yacht and sail around the world and enjoy my life and not worry about, drivers not being ready for a piece of hardware that's supposed to be launching in like a week, right?
It's
exactly.
Like the number of bags of cash people assume I've been offered and the number of bags of cash I've actually been offered are wildly divergent numbers. 0 is the number I've been offered, just for the record.
Yes.
Anyway.
All right.
Anyway, any other questions for Brad?
No, Brad. Yeah, do you need to go?
Take
I can take 1 or 2 more if we only have 1 or 2 more.
Let's do a fun one with Brad.
Let's do a fun with Brad, and then we'll have the one that Will and I have been waiting for.
Okay, let's see here. From Liquid R, what is your game, movie, show, or book or recommendation of the week?
Of the week.
I mean, Andor. It's the last week of Andor. That show's real good. That's my recommendation. I took the easy one, so I wanted fast.
Andor, I haven't watched a single episode of yet. I'm actually going to take that recommendation and do it soon. I'm seeing everyone freak out about it. I just recently watched on Netflix The Residents, which if you like kind of quirky murder kind of things, it has a lot of Only Murders in the Buildings kind of vibe, and it's definitely worth the watch. I don't watch a ton of TV. Like to get through a season of a show streaming on Netflix will usually take me a few weeks, a month maybe, because I only watch it. But I binge watched that all in one Saturday and Sunday.
That was a fun show. I like that a lot. It's a quirky mystery detective story. So, yeah.
Have any of you watched Black Bag? We watched that last weekend and it was
Not
fabulous.
Me.
It's like a good spy thriller. It's intense and fun. I mean, maybe not
Excellent. I will check it out.
but it's good.
I am going to be out in left field again, as I do, and I actually will recommend a book that has nothing to do with hardware or sci-fi or anything like that. But I think of it as cool nerdery anyway, which is it's called Fight Right. It's by Julie Gottman. I think she also co-wrote with her husband, John Gottman. If you're not familiar with their work, they are a pair of scientists, I think, based in the Seattle region. And what they do is that they study couples fighting.
Oh.
So so it's really cool because it's like all this science behind it, where it's like, you hear a lot of things like don't go to bed angry, that kind of stuff. And they're like, that stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. And they actually like dive into the nuts and bolts of what actually allows you to get along with other people and what doesn't work.
Like how to win?
So I like that kind of science stuff, like to understand the world and people, and like this book happened across my attention, and I'm getting a lot out of it just in terms of like understanding like how arguments go wrong with other people. If you are interested in that kind of thing too, highly recommend checking out the book.
What's it called again?
Fight Right.
Nice.
Yeah. I will say that I don't think that your approach with the fighting to win is going to match with this book. So maybe it's not for you.
I mean, look, if you're not winning, you're losing, Elena. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
No, that's it's always interesting. Like that cognitive science stuff is always really cool because like it's amazing how different people perceive different things, and the more you understand about how everybody perceives things.
I love this kind of science though, because it's like they went in there and they've got like skin sensors, like heart rate monitors, like other things, because they're actually like getting all this data about how you are physiologically responding to situations, right? Or like they're study participants, and like they're talking about how for certain people, like some of this like kind of pop culture advice just doesn't apply. Like the whole like you shouldn't fight, like, or you should never like do these kinds of things. And it's just like it really just matters. Like, are you matched with someone who doesn't like get you so worked up, like physiologically and psychologically, that you can't actually process things? It's so cool.
How did they trigger the fights? Is my question.
So that's also really interesting too, because they were like, so apparently if you just ask a couple who's willing to do the study to just talk about a thing that they fight about constantly, they will just start talking about it. And like they'll just say like, please start talking about a topic that has always been a point of contention between you two, and they'll just like start getting into it.
Fascinating.
It's so cool. The science is so cool. Like even if you're not in a relationship, I think it is so worth a read, because I this is the kind of stuff I nerd out about.
Yeah.
Like to me, people are very confusing because there's such variance, and this like kind of almost puts a system to it in a way. Like there's like structure to it, and I really like that.
Interesting. I will definitely add that to my list. That sounds really good.
It's not Andor. So
I mean, look, it's that kind of stuff reminds me of the stuff that they did at Davis like 15 years ago, where they built an ontology of wine. They took people who didn't know how to identify wine flavors, and they trained them by developing a shared ontology for flavors and concepts that this group of random people they pulled, like mostly retirees, that they pulled off the street, and like anyway, it's really cool. Very good.
How about you, Willis?
Yeah. Well, I usually don't recommend people to watch something so depressing and grim, especially with all the chaos that's going on in the world.
Depression show.
But Black Mirror, the new season of Black Mirror, I like it a lot. Like I think each season of Black Mirror, as it's coming down to be more like realistic. Like it's so close to reality that you're just like, oh goodness, this is probably gonna happen in the next year, month even, so but I still like the stories a lot, so yeah. Black Mirror.
I haven't watched that one yet. I love Black Mirror. I watched pretty much all the rest of them up until now, but it was a lot more fun when it was like, oh, this is a kind of fun, fantastical, dark take on the future, whereas now it's like, this is the future.
Yeah.
Okay, we're here.
We are very close to
that documentary. That documentary, Black
Mirror. Sometimes you wonder, like, are there time travelers? Like, are they trying to tell us something?
They're probably among us now.
Every lottery winner is a time traveler, Elena. That's the thing you need to remember. Yeah. Think about it. Yeah.
I don't think.
Follow the money. If you want something light and fun, Taskmaster is very good. It's on YouTube. It's a UK comedian reality show where they give them non-linearly solvable tasks and ask them to solve these ridiculous tasks, and then they arbitrarily rate them based on how well they perform, and it's quite charming and good and fairly lighthearted with a little bit of acerbic British wit attached.
Oh, okay, so it's British. Okay.
Yeah.
So my brain, being the wildly chaotic associative thing that it is like when you start talking about wholesome, I was like, oh, there is something that positive I've seen this week that I really enjoy. But it's just like I don't know, it's like a TikTok or like a Instagram like reel, like short, where it's just like, it's this, she's so wholesome. She's so like bubbly, and she just like re-narrates or like she explains like what gym bros are doing, and she's like basically describes them like in these like terms. It's like the verbal equivalent of someone just adding like unicorn stickers to gym bro culture, and it's so cute. I love it so much.
Oh, that sounds fabulous.
She's so adorable.
Sounds really good. Should we do Brad?
Right. I could do one more. I can split now if you guys are gonna
keep
going.
We are gonna keep going because there's something very pressing that we want to talk about.
All right. Well, I'll let you guys talk about that. I know what's going on, and I have no feelings on this matter. So.
See you, sir.
Thanks, Brad.
Bye, Brad.
Bye, Brad.
All right.
Okay, so what's this question, Willis?
Okay, so, one question. Well, actually, no, I have one real quick from Adam Patrick Murray is, will anyone from PCWorld be at the launch of the new Sunnyvale Micro Center?
Yes-ish.
Wow,
Ish.
that was coy. Maybe. I'm a maybe for that.
Stay tuned. We may have some very excited video, which I may just be babbling frenetically in excitement about Micro Center reopening in the Bay Area.
I want a video of you like running into Micro Center like a kid going.
Oh, I'm going to skip in there. I'm going to probably wear a heart, like if not this heart sweater, one kind of, I have like 2 heart sweaters.
Okay.
And I just need to get, thematically match the mood, right? And I am literally probably just going to skip in the doors. Because
open the door and just scream, "What up, chat? Micro Center, woo!"
No, not like that.
That would be pretty good, though.
No.
It's an option. That's all I'm saying.
We can, if you come, we can do like different takes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We can figure that out.
Well, I have to see what my next Thursday looks like. But yeah, I think that's next week, right? Next Thursday?
I don't know if that part is like
that might
immediately shareable. I think it's just like some of us like may like just be going to Micro Center at some point, either with the hordes or not the hordes, and we will find out what it looks like in the new Santa Clara.
I've never been to a Micro Center before.
I know. I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for you because it's like everything that you wanted from Fry's, but without the like
skeeziness.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of CompUSA a lot when I like the picture in my head when people talk about Micro Center is CompUSA.
CompUSA is like if you had a more like slightly more no nonsense vibe to Micro Center, but Micro Center has it's like going. What kind of grocery store can I use as an analogy for this?
It's like a slightly bougie but not real bougie grocery store.
It'd be like Trader Joe's if Trader Joe's was not weird.
Okay.
So like just imagine like the Trader Joe's like vibe, but without like the
weird
citrus rind, brown cookie things.
Oh, so it's not the Trader Joe's. It's not like the kind of tropical vibe that you get in Trader Joe's.
Correct, but it's that like the employees seem like they're kind of like
they seem reasonably well taken care of.
Yeah, and like people are friendly and like people are happy to buy pairs individually.
I like a single pair. Yeah.
So like Micro Center kind of has that vibe for me. Okay. Whereas like CompUSA felt like a non-warehouse version of Costco.
Yeah, for me, there's like a scale. Like if we're putting these on an axis, there's like Office Depot at one end, which is a place you can get toner and printers and paper and also like a handful of computers, right? But probably not really. Maybe like a sound card and some CDs.
Yeah,
this,
like
right?
so like there's more of that corporate. I think someone in chat just said this, where like as Kyle in the chat says, CompUSA was too corporate, and I don't know if I would say it was too corporate, but I would say it had more of that kind of corporate vibe to it.
Yeah, I can see that.
And Micro Center to me does not have a corporate vibe. It has a little bit more of that, still a small like family owned. I don't know if it actually is, but it has that kind of family owned vibe, but they just got bigger. And now they have a chain.
Like, do they have food? Like, can you get a hot dog at Micro Center?
I don't think so. I don't
Not the one
that.
in LA that I
don't remember that.
But
But why would you need food when your soul is being fed by customer service representatives who can actually answer your questions in an intelligent manner.
I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'll always eat a hot dog, Elena.
There's probably going to be a Costco nearby. We can stop there.
Perfect. Okay, done.
And we can even get one of the Lost Leader rotisserie chickens while we're at it.
I don't know. I don't know if I would eat a rotisserie chicken like just as a to go. Like you grab out of that hand.
You get one. You get one wing. I get the other.
Yeah, exactly. We're all greased up going into the Micro Center.
Yeah, perfect picnic food. Yeah, you guys.
I'm ready for this question.
Okay,
here we go.
Elena, how are you on time? Actually, I know you gotta.
I probably have at most another like 20 minutes, so we can kind of keep it.
Okay,
like
cool.
that.
Okay, so one from the Willis Lie here. Nintendo says it reserves its right to brick your Switch if you disobey its EULA term. Is this a slippery slope into hardware as service?
So this EULA has problems. Oh, that's a bad noise. EULA also gives you 90 days to opt out of forced arbitration instead of ability to join class action lawsuits against Nintendo.
Yeah. There's a lot of so I was ranting about this in our group chat for work, and maybe also ranting about this before the show, which is probably why Willis was like, I should probably ask her about this on air. And I am so frustrated by this because it is not going to solve the problem they think it's going to solve. And at the same time, so let's back up for a second here, where it's like, okay, I can get on a soapbox and start talking about, oh, this feels like a slippery slope. We're going to start seeing potentially the door open to hardware as service, where you pay for hardware that you think you own, but they basically control your right to how you use it and what it is. And it's like basically they're licensing you the hardware, which is kind of feels really icky and dumb. And we hated this already on the software side, and we still complain about it. But this is now the world we live in for software, and I don't want to see it spread to hardware. That's a conversation on itself. But for me, the most frustrating part, and I was ruminating about this in the car when I was driving over here, because I used to work for a company that was owned by Japanese companies. So there is like just a certain way they do things in Japan, and like that's just kind of culturally how it works. And when you work with Japanese companies, you learn that you have to work in the system, and you can get by, you can make things happen as long as you get by, as long as you work within the system. But this is like, it's crazy to me because I get where they're coming from. I get why culturally this would work in Japan, but it's like, wow, you do not understand your worldwide market whatsoever. And yes, it's your company. You can do what you want with it. But at the same time, like there are just so many better options out there. Like why not take them? Like, the reason, like not the reason, but one of the big reasons why people pirate is because it's hard to get that. Or it's like you make it very expensive for them to get that, right? So like,
streaming services specifically reduced piracy for a really long time, up until the cost of streaming services outpaced the ease of piracy.
Yeah, exactly, right?
The lines crossed.
The thing is, because it has to do with convenience, has to do with accessibility, right? Like, let's take anime for example, right? People were doing fan subs. They were like doing like things that were literally piracy, right? Because they didn't have the copyright to distribute or access. But once Japanese companies got on board the idea of like, okay, we need to stream, we need to make these series accessible, like people started just signing up for these subscriptions, right? Because especially
Crunchyroll's $5 a month, and it was way easier than dealing with a bunch of skeezy sites.
Yeah, it's way easier than like dealing with torrents and worrying about that, waiting for it to download, all that, dealing with the skeevy sites, that kind of stuff, right? And it's just like, y'all, like if people are trying, if you want to kill emulation, if you want to kill the fact that people are like ripping ROMs so that they can play games that they played when they're 12 because they just want that hit of nostalgia, make it easy for them to access through a virtual store. Make it easy for them to use their original controllers, because it feels like garbage to use a different controller than what the game was designed for. Like, why are we doing this? The technology is in place, and the cost of like doing this is probably not going to be that expensive relative to having to chase people with a mallet. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand. Like, and like dealing with customer service like calls where people are pissed because they're like they got bricked accidentally. You know, and like what? And also, it's the terms are so general. Like, how are we defining something that's going to get you hit with the ban hammer?
I think that there's a bunch of stuff to unpack here, right? One is the EULA doesn't state what conditions they would fire the death stick on. And to be clear, like Microsoft and consoles that are mostly online have for a long time, reserved the right to prohibit hardware lock you from using services if you're caught cheating or if you're caught jailbreaking your console or whatever the case may be. So in a way that renders those machines useless because at some point you'll get a game that comes out post the most recent update you have on the machine and yada yada, you just won't be able to play it, which is like, so be it. The arbitrariness of this and the fact that it's not specified, I have real problems with, right? Like if somebody buys a jailbreak cart from some flea market in Canada and they don't realize the implications of that, are they going to ruin their kid's Switch because they bought what they thought was a real thing?
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like what happens to your account? Because you're going to get put on the naughty list, right?
Yeah.
And then are they going to get to the point of someday, like I am doomcasting here a little bit, but it's like, are they going to get to the point where like they also note your IP address, the other things like that? You know what I mean? Like to me, it just seems so sticky. And especially because, and so here's the thing, if they had done this for the Switch 2, I would have been like, ooh, that sucks. I don't like that. But that's an informed choice when you're buying. Well, so the fact that this applies now to existing gear when you bought it under different terms, like that to me is the scariest part about all of this.
So this is the thing that it had me upset. And
great.
I have something
what a
in
great
this category
segue.
as well. It's an incredible segue, Lena. Thank you. So my family, we ended up with 3 Switches as a result of pandemic-related Animal Crossing play and their goofy policies about one island per hardware console, and everybody in my family playing thousands of hours of Animal Crossing from 2020 to 2022. And we also play a lot of Mario Kart, which is a multiplayer game. We have 3 Switches. We have 1 digital copy of Mario Kart and 1 physical copy of Mario Kart. And because of the way the DRM on the Switch worked, up until the most recent system update, you were able to set one console as hey, this can play all the games all the time. This is my main console. And that has been my daughter's console because she often plays when we're in the car going someplace or something like that and doesn't have internet. My Switch is set to always require internet to play everything, which is fine because I only play games at the house, right? And my wife had the cart in her Switch. So we were able to all play Mario Kart on different Switches, sitting in the same living room, as if we had all purchased 2 copies, as if we had all purchased our copy of the game. Now, when they added the virtual card update, they added a check for the internet connected device to say, is the other copy of this game in use? And there's no way to opt out and go to the old system, which has been the way it's worked since the dawn of that console 8 years ago, 9 years ago, however long it's been. So they changed the rules midway through in a way that feels really nasty to me. And like, yeah, I could go buy another copy of Mario Kart for $45 on this console that's going to be end of life in a month. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stop playing Mario Kart with my family, or we're going to have to play split screen like it's 1998 again. And
what are we coming to?
It doesn't feel good when they change the rules midway through the console is the thing that feels really gross to me.
But also so here's another thing too, right? And I think this again boils down to communication. They kind of sprung it. That's what it feels like. It didn't feel like they had like decided to do this rollout and they're like, hey, that's what I mean. Like messaging is so important, right? Because if they've been like, hey, we've done some analysis, we've realized that like this is a problem for us. We are making some changes to our console. Like you could like at least give people time to get more adjusted to a like crappy change. And they was just like, nope, sorry.
But I mean, like, okay, so in fairness, the backstory on this is that for the first time, I think ever really during the main console life cycle, the NVIDIA firmware on the launch switches got broken to the point that like the Switch was really easy to pirate games, like to pull unencrypted game ROMs off of, which meant piracy suddenly became piracy was on the menu for the Switch, which hadn't happened with previous consoles while they were still in like active active release for new games. And like, usually, like with the 3DS, that happened right as the Switch was starting to come online, right? Like it was, sales were winding down. The console wasn't making a ton of money for them anymore. And while it was bad for them from a business standpoint, it wasn't potentially disastrous like it was for the Switch. So that's why we saw the Switch Lite and the OLED come out so quickly and things like that, because they wanted to get new versions of the hardware that didn't have the vulnerability out and in the channel, so that they weren't selling potentially exploitable machines early on. And Nintendo, being a Japanese company, as you said, freaked out about this problem that they couldn't fix in software. So like if you have a launch Switch, it's the pirate Switch and will be the pirate Switch forever, because the problem with it wasn't software fixable, right? They panicked. They accelerated the Switch 2 development, all sorts of stuff that probably wouldn't have happened for a couple more years kind of got going sooner than it would have. And this reaction would have been almost natural in that time period, right? Like if they'd come out and said, hey, we can brick your Switch if we catch you running the stuff that lets you rip ROMs off of your Switch, off of your old Switch, that is a solution to get the millions of piratable Switches off of the market for them. And I can see them saying, but this is like 5 years after that happened. Why are we having this conversation now? It doesn't make any sense at all. And it just seems like an arbitrary decision late in the game for this previous gen hardware that in a year, nobody's, I mean, realistically,
is it though?
Realistically, people are gonna be making Switch games for a long time because there's a bazillion of them in the market.
But is it that surprising? Because in some ways, the timing of this doesn't seem like, I mean, again, correlation, causation, all that kind of stuff, can't necessarily draw any of that. But I find it highly suggestive that this is happening in a period where there's all this uncertainty around U.S. fiscal policy. The U.S. market is not that small when it comes to buying consoles, especially, handhelds, because most people aren't going to be doing what Adam does. I mean, Adam, I know you love your handhelds that are not the Switch, but most people, when they get a handheld, they're going to get the Switch. Yeah. And so I could see it as like, oh, maybe they were looking at their pre-order numbers for the Switch 2 and seeing how many people had to cancel because they were concerned, because they thought maybe they couldn't afford it anymore because of like the saying that.
So you think it's defensive for the old platform because they're worried about the new? I mean, look,
I think they could be worried about adoption of the new platform. I think they could be worried about, the adoption rate even of the older platform if they're planning to keep it around while the new one is, launching. And I'm wondering too if this is their way of trying to find some stability, because I didn't look deeply into this, but I was like reading some like random, very general reports about like the Japanese economy also is not doing super great, I think, in response to like
that's
all
why
this.
they have a Japanese exclusive, a Japanese language exclusive Switch 2 that you can only play Japanese language games on. That's much cheaper because the yen is so weak right now.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. So like I think there could be like some uncertainty around that. So I do think that 5 years later, this happening, I don't think it's tied to the initial issue. I think it's a reaction to other like circumstances going on in the world potentially. Still, it is. So to me, it's like, okay, is there not a way to figure out like this person did a jailbreak because they just like jailbreaking things and they're not doing anything actually like outside of that, which breaks terms of, I know they don't care, but I'm saying like it would make it even more palatable if they're like, we're specifically jailbreaking if we can detect that you're doing these things on this machine, as opposed to if you jailbreak it.
I mean, I think. Look, you always have to defend. This is why people ask, why do people use all these invasive anti-cheat things on Windows on PC games, right? And it's because the Helldivers posts actually had a really good example when Helldivers 2 came out of why they were using really kind of aggressive anti-cheat on that game, and it's because in the first game they didn't, and cheaters came in and they would basically grant everybody that was in that game, whether they match made or wanted this, all of the weapons in the game and basically steal the progression from those players, which then gave those people no incentive to play and killed the player pool and all of the things that there's downstream consequences. So you have to defend your multiplayer games for that, obviously. I don't think that's Nintendo's concern. I think my guess is, I don't know if you're aware, but Nintendo has a pretty rough history with every other console. Like it's, the N64 and the NES. I mean, the SNES and the NES both did great. The N64 kind of a stinker. GameCube not fantastic, but had good games and didn't sell bazillions of copies. The Wii was a juggernaut, right? The Wii U sold like 4 million units. The Switch was a juggernaut. If you follow the last few generations trend lines, the Switch 2 could go either way, and maybe they are hedging to make sure that they maintain that they keep this as a viable platform, but it still is a horrifically anti-consumer move.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because I think Nintendo is big enough in their space to be influential for what other companies do. And I really just don't like, I mean, it's one thing if it's like, okay, that's like a Japanese company doing their Japanese company thing, but I just really do not want to see this trickle into other things. Like, for example, phones. Like, I jailbreak phones all the time, or I used to. I got lazy. Yeah. But like, I want to be able, and the main reason I even got into doing that with a phone, because the first smartphone I ever bought was such a piece of crap that I actually had to.
You go to those Samsung first gen phones?
It was an HTC phone.
Okay.
And it was so bogged down by its bloatware that I basically had to like root it so that I could basically just put a stock version or a closer to stock version of Android on it so it would run without like stuttering all the time. Yeah. And I got like 4 years of life out of that phone after doing that. And the idea that like hardware makers might start getting to this position where they're like, well, no, we want to do things so that if we catch you breaking it, then we're just going to brick it so that it forces you to buy new stuff from us. Like, I don't want that to become a thing, because I'm not saying that Nintendo is doing that specifically for this purpose. We have seen this happen in other fields, and I don't want this to happen to hardware. And
you know, there's not a huge homebrew scene on. I mean, there's starting to be a homebrew scene on the Switch now, but you know, typically consoles that are currently available don't have big homebrew scenes, and then you see all sorts of weird stuff happen after they reach end of life, and people are like making Sega Genesis games and Dreamcast games that are like new, developed in 2025 Sega Genesis games, right? I don't think that Nintendo cares about that stuff. I think they're entirely focused on piracy, and people like look. The Wii made them so much money that the Wii U's failure almost destroyed them, right? Like they were fine. They had money in the bank and all that. But even big giant companies like Nintendo, if they have two stinkers in a row, have a problem. And they're incredibly conservative about that stuff as a result of the lessons learned through the N64 and the GameCube.
Sure. I just think there's a better way to introduce poison pills into the process as opposed to just straight like, we're going to brick your hardware.
I mean, look, if I had a nickel for every time a Japanese first party didn't understand the internet and internet culture correctly, I'd have at least
what I'm talking about,
$4 or $5.
So it's just like it's a culture clash. I actually understand where it's coming from. I'm just so frustrated by. I'm actually more frustrated and scared, honestly, that Western companies are going to go, oh, you know what we could do with this? That's more of my concern than Nintendo themselves, honestly.
Well, Nintendo has a lot of really expensive lawyers. I'm really curious. I'm really curious why, like, what's going to happen with the EU, because the EU has some fairly good right to repair and consumer protection laws that cover this kind of thing. And I'm curious to see whether the EULA or the laws, the EU
I don't know
win.
if this is in their EULA, though.
Oh, it might not be.
I mean, I'm guessing it couldn't be because it would run afoul of their laws. But in the U.S., I don't think there's.
What you're saying is we should all just move to Europe.
Yeah, well.
Perfect.
Any other rants from you or questions?
No, that's it. I really think that changing the DRM rules midway through, because it affects me personally, is the greatest affront that I've ever had. If I still was on Twitter, I would post an angry screed directed
I didn't care about
account.
this until it affected me. Yeah. I will say, this is actually a principle of mine because I don't even own a Switch and I'm still irritated by this.
Yeah. And like, look, if you want something that's open, then buy a PC and put Linux on it. And if you want something that's, infected by capitalism in one way or the other, then we have Switches and Xboxes and Windows PCs. And this is, look, I've been running Linux on the desktop at home for the last couple of weeks, and I'm already feeling it. The beard's getting grayer and longer. And
so you're powering up.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I'm just getting stronger.
You're just getting stronger.
The rage is building inside me. And, Gordon's not here to keep me in check
Linux
anymore,
boost.
Unfortunately. So,
all right. Any other good, fun questions to take us out before I take us out?
We can wrap this up. Yeah, we can. Even though you gotta go.
I mean, we could do like one fun one. I think there's a couple of fun ones left in the Discord server. I think.
Did you guys see one?
I thought maybe.
I can open it up and see.
I don't have that on my. laptop right now. Oh, whoops. I thought I logged in, but I did not.
Do you want to do a question about ports? I love ports.
Oh, there's a tech pod question.
What? There's a tech pod question?
Yeah, let's have Will field that, and then I'll take us out.
From Stained Glass. So on Tech Pod episode 284, yogurt was mentioned briefly and discussed. What's your favorite flavor of yogurt, and why is Will right that unsweetened plain yogurt is the best?
Wait, you can explain this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
plain yogurt.
I was talking. My friend of the show, Brad Shoemaker, my co-host, and Brad and Will made a tech pod, said that we were talking about yogurt, and he was talking about changing sweeteners, and I was like, well, I just eat the plain stuff because it's delicious. I love it. You know, we get the bougiest yogurt you can get in Northern California that's not like made that you don't know the cow's name or whatever, and it's this Strauss is the creamery. And they do just a plain unsweetened yogurt that is like so sour and rich and delicious. And like there's a bunch of flavors and crazy. And it's probably costs like $1,000 a quart now. I don't know what it costs.
Will is able to name every strand, every culture that is used in this.
Yeah, of course. But it's like I put a little bit of granola in there or sometimes cut up a banana or something and I'm good, right? No sweetener needed. Brad was floored by this. He couldn't take the concept of not putting sweetener in the yogurt, and I said he should try getting better yogurt, and then we stopped talking about it. And I guess this question comes from there.
Oh,
so I like a Greek yogurt. I like I'll have a Faya. I'll eat your Ouya whatever yogurt.
There are words being named that I don't even know.
What do you not know a yogurt person?
I walk into Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
I go to the dairy section. I look for the 2% fat Greek yogurt.
Okay.
I decide if I want the 16 ounce that week or the 32 ounce.
Yeah.
I take the container because the 32 ounce is only non-fat, I think. So I have to decide between the two. And I take the container I want and then I go home and I eat it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I didn't know about the Strauss stuff until my daughter was born, and she little kids are yogurt fiends.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they eat a lot of yogurt.
Oh, okay.
It turns out it's usually all over the face and it's
Cute.
a little bit in the mouth.
Cute as an observer, maybe not so much for the parent.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's fine. It wipes off. It's ways than spaghetti or whatever. But yeah, it's delish and I love it. Willis, what's your yogurt? What's your yogurt pref?
I don't actually eat a whole lot of yogurt. I did try Strauss for the first time, like just a couple months ago, because Diana loves yogurt. So yeah, but I throw a bunch of stuff. I throw granola. I throw a little bit of honey, blueberries, and all that. So yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I thought this question when the person said like, "Why is plain unsweetened yogurt like the best option?" I thought they were asking I thought they were saying that you eat it just like that. Like no additives whatsoever. Like you don't add the granola, you don't add the blueberries, you don't add anything. And I was like, that's a take because I don't think I know many people outside myself who will do that. Like sometimes I just want protein and I will just eat the yogurt as is because I don't actually want the extra sweet.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling splurgy, I might add some honey to it.
So I absolutely like it is rare. It is one of my go-to, like, hey, I need a snack for something. Like it's when you do podcasts a lot and you send up talking for 2+ hours on the reg. And
you mean like now?
Yeah, and it's like not a snacking kind of pod. Some podcasts are snacky podcasts, some less so.
It's true.
Most of my podcasts are not snacky podcasts, so I end up looking for high protein stacks that are going to leave me satiated and ready to deliver the nuclear hottest takes.
Can I also recommend nuts to you? So like, you got your yogurt and you got some like nuts for the fat content.
Yeah, nuts. I love nuts, but I'm nuts.
Walnuts. Are you allergic?
No, I've had like when you've had multiple digestive tract surgeries, sometimes nuts are dangerous. So I see. I have to limit my nut intake for reasons we don't need to get into. Hi, everybody. We
learned something about Will today. Yeah.
Gut surgery sucks. That's the takeaway. Anyway.
But you're still here.
I am grateful to be here.
So we do need to wrap up, unfortunately, because as much as I love shooting the breeze with everybody indefinitely, I have to go. So thanks, y'all, for tuning in for my first official hosting of the Full Nerd. Yay. I've only ever done like half nerds, which didn't really count. think the last time I hosted a podcast episode was like a decade ago. So
it's to prepare you for the full nerd.
The full nerd. Yeah, just like working my way up.
The reboot.
I skipped the 3/4 and I just went straight to full nerd.
Yeah.
But thank you, as always, to everybody for tuning in. Let's see if I can do this off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Be sure to check back next week for your dose of the best, I think as Adam would say, PC hardware chat. TBD on exact time. Normally we are Tuesdays, but with Computex coming, we're going to have live commentary casts. We're going to have on the floor, I think, episode. So check back for that.
Adam's going to eat stuff off the ground?
Not if Willis can help it. Don't forget to subscribe. We are on Pocket Cast, I believe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, thanks to Will.
Yeah, YouTube podcasts.
Anywhere that Will decides that he wants to sign us up for in like 15 minutes, that's also a potential option. Be sure to leave a comment and a review for us every time you do. Will is going to tell us a little bit more about this stomach surgery that he had. Maybe not.
No, you don't want that. I promise you.
I think that would be a lot more cheerful than the doom casting we've been doing, right? Where everyone's like, this is depressing. And can we stop talking about how everything's going to be terrible in the U.S.?
The GI floor of the hospital is not a place you want to be. It's
don't let Adam eat candy off of that floor.
Oh, no, definitely
that's a no. That's a big no.
I'm basically like will be the parent, like just hovering behind Adam is like, don't eat that. No, don't. Don't be eating that. That's bad for you.
Not in your job description, but now part of your job description.
You got to be on video later, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So I am Elena, your fill-in for your normal fill-in host, and saying goodbye. Also saying farewell is Will.
Thank you for having me, as always. It was lovely to be here.
It was nice to rage out with you for Nintendo stuff.
I'm here to yell about Nintendo screwing me personally over.
We be old people,
and I guess also everybody else. That's fine too.
Yep.
Whatever.
Thanks to Brad, who is no longer on the screen, and instead we just have a mirror of us at the table.
It's a lot of us.
Yep. And then thank you again to Willis for controlling all the verticals and horizontals and making sure that we don't steer the ship off course.
I didn't monitor too much. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Actually, just real quick before, I want to clarify from one John Phillips why there is a copy of Maximum PC and Boot, and then there's the Reader Man on the table. We have a bit of a video, one video coming out. It's a teaser that I'm just laying on the table. It's a tribute to Gordon, our dear Gordon. So look forward to that probably post Computex. So yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in again, and we will see you at Computex. Bye.
No one can see us waving.
I know, I do it every week anyway.
Or dancing. Probably for the best though.
Good chair dancing.